they leaned into everything that people are pissed off about right now, aggressively. And this is usually what Xbox does. You know?
And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. This episode is brought to you by Minis Forum and the MS03, JLC PCB, where you can get $123 off in coupons for their PCBs below. And then CDkeyoffer.com, where you can get Windows 11 Professional for just $24. And today I'm joined by someone who, excitingly, when I first started the podcast, every other guest or most guests were new guests. I had just started the podcast. At this point, though, I want to say, 7-8 years into this, I have a pantheon of, if you will, like Greek gods that I have on fairly regularly, because I've just networked where I have like a few dozen people that I like to talk to a lot. But every now and then there's still a new guest. And I thought this person was long overdue, as there's so much Xbox news right now. Like I think a lot of Xbox gamers, well, not just Xbox, a lot of console gamers are mad about a lot of things right now. But if you're somebody who talks about it, this is like one of the best years to be someone to talk about it, is there's so much to discuss. And see, I want to have this person on. So Jez, please, who are you? Introduce yourself. Where are you from? And what got you into doing what you do?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, mate. Yeah, I'm Jez Corden, the somewhat notorious thing at the moment. But yeah, I'm a British content creator, game journalist, if you can call it that. I'm a blogger. I don't really use the term journalist very much, because I didn't go to journalism school. I just, like, the way I came through this, it was very much like I was doing it as a hobby. I was working as an IT guy about 15 years ago, and I was just I was retraining myself to web development, because I made websites in the 90s as a kid, and that was all tables. And then it was like I got a job in it, and I was like, okay, now I've got to learn CSS and stuff like that, and PHP. So as I was teaching myself web development again, I just, like, as part of, rather than use the lorem ipsum a placeholder text, I just decided I'd write an Xbox blog as like a test bed kind of thing.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and it became a hobby, and then someone offered me a job. Now, yeah, and it's just like, okay, I'm still learning, still don't know what I'm doing, but it's only really the last few years I've started trying to take it more seriously, because it's still sinking in, honestly. I come from a region in the UK which is like, it's very kind of deprived. I think my town was voted the worst place to live in the United Kingdom, so it's kind of like you're not really, where I'm from, you're not really taught to have dreams, kind of thing. So, like,
may I ask what part of England specifically? Yeah,
it's a town called Walsall. The biggest
Warsaw, like the Polish capital.
Yeah, it sounds like that. It's north of Birmingham, which more people are familiar with. But it's like the biggest company out of Warsaw is Face Punch Studios, who make Rust and Gary's Mod. Yeah, so that's the biggest company in the town, and Rust definitely feels inspired by the town. But
I see, Warsaw, like, yeah, two L's.
Two L's, yeah. It's weird. But
I've actually got an anecdote like that as well. So I grew up in central Illinois. For anyone from a lot of people in the United States don't even know, like, Bloomington, Peoria area, and there's a town called Champaign, Illinois. It's mid-sized town. I don't remember how many people, but it's in the tens of thousands, but not a million. And that is where the people that make Saints Row are in that small city in the middle of Illinois, like 3 hours south of Chicago. So there's weird stuff everywhere. You'd be surprised, everyone, like where some of these studios are located.
Yeah, it's see, I didn't even know that until I started doing this. I was like, oh, hang on, Gary's mod was made in Walsall. I had no idea, because it's pretty an influential game, right? But yeah, that's the only thing you'd ever know about that town. Oh, and I suppose Judas Priest, but that's it.
Oh,
yeah, Judas Priest as well from that town. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. You know, obviously a lot of people, I don't think we haven't really crossed paths before, but a lot of people in my community are asking me a lot about, you know, things that you speak on with regards to Xbox, and you know, oftentimes it's very technical and a bit over my head.
But I like to get into the business and, you know, kind of community and cultural side of this stuff as well, which actually, on that note, let's start here as well then. So for fun, as a test, you started an Xbox blog. So you must have been an Xbox fan for a long time now. What does it feel like in this era looking back? Because I can speak as someone that's followed PC hardware and also I would say PlayStation a lot. Like, boy, I can tell you things are different now. Like look at AMD and Intel. AMD is now seen as better than Intel, and that was not the case when I was first building my PC. So things change a lot. But what's it like to be an Xbox fan all of this time? I mean, there were great times like 2007 to 2009, but you must remember the TV Xbox One reveal. Well, and go on.
It's, again, I come at this from a really weird place because I wasn't a big Xbox guy. The OG Xbox era. What happened to me was I was a PC gamer, but then my PC blew up basically, and I couldn't afford to replace the bits. I think I need a new motherboard if I remember correctly.
Can I ask what year it was roughly?
Oh God, I don't know, man. Off the top of my head, it was a long time ago. I basically
I early 2000s or 90s.
It was the 2000s, so the mid 2000s. Or the late, maybe the early 2010s actually, but or the late 2000s. But I could do it from World of Warcraft expansion because that's where I was playing. I was playing World of Warcraft on PC. And that was like my game for a really long time. And it was during, was it the Burning Crusade? It was during the Burning Crusade and then during Wrath of the Lich King, which I could look up the year, but that was like, I think that was the 2000s. My so I don't think in terms of dates. I think in terms of World of Warcraft expansions. That's how my but my PC blew up and I couldn't afford to replace it. But I still wanted to game, and there was like, well, World of Warcraft's not available on console, but like the Xbox 360 arcade was like really cheap to buy, and I didn't have good income. I was, you know, working part-time minimum wage, so I didn't have a ton of money. And it was during the credit crunch, you know, the financial crash. Like I think England had something like 25% unemployment or something, youth unemployment. I couldn't find a job, and you know, and then like when I did find a job, it was a very, very bad job. So I became a console gamer because of that initially, and then I discovered all these games that, like, you know, were sort of more console adjacent. You know, and stuff like you know, Fallout 3 and Oblivion and Skyrim and all that kind of stuff. So, but I really got into Xbox when the TV stuff dropped, right? And it's kind of funny because that was the thing everyone hated, but when they first started announcing that stuff, I was like, hey, that sounds really cool. Actually, I actually liked the digital sharing thing and the TV stuff, and that was the kind of thing that really got my attention. And I just started my blog, and I was writing about Windows Phone, which had Xbox achievements for the games, and it just sort of like gradually, that whole Windows 8 kind of era kind of just sucked me more into the ecosystem, which I suppose is what it was designed to do, right? I had a Windows Phone because they were cheaper, but also because I've told this story before, but I had a friend of a friend who was a big Apple fanboy, and I'd never known someone who was a tech fanboy before, and just to be a contrarian dick, I got a Windows Phone because he was like, "Oh, you need to get an iPhone. You need to get an iPhone." And I was like, I just wanted to be contrarian, so I got a Windows Phone because of that reason. But I was like, actually, this is pretty cool. And then when like the sort of they were talking about having like these digital licenses where like you could pool your games into like a sort of a family sharing kind of thing, which is what Steam has now, which I love, by the way. And it was sort of like, I really like the idea of like, because I've got siblings and family and friends, and it's like, it saves so much money if we could all have one pool of digital licenses. So, but I also saw like the huge backlash to it. And I felt like people are burying the lead here. You know, the people are talking about the DRM stuff and the things that are just sort of normal now. Like all these platforms have DRM. But I felt like there are benefits here, you know, like, which is kind of what you get with the Steam ecosystem now, which people, you know, swear by. And yeah, there were downsides like the 24-hour check-in and that kind of thing. But you know, I was just sort of like, I kind of like the vision. So I started blogging about it and trying to like talk about the details that were kind of being overlooked by the mainstream media, I kind of felt like at the time. So but yeah, like as we go into the Asher era, it is kind of crazy how much things have changed. Like I came into this specifically to save money. And now they just announced that Xbox Series X in Europe is going to cost almost $1,000. That's like the era of this is the affordable option is completely gone now. And you said to me before the show that you were an optimist about this stuff.
It's hard to be lately, I will say that.
Yeah. I'm really curious. Do you think like, because the memory crisis is driving this, right? Do you think like prices come down, or is this just going to be like, this is it now? Like gaming is going to be this luxury, console gaming is going to be this luxury thing, and then they make the bulk of their money on PC or other platforms. Is kind of like what I'm thinking now.
So there's a lot you just brought up. I like wrote down several things I want to give my thoughts on. So the first thing, Xbox One's TV stuff. I think if we're being honest, one of the major reasons that was such a backlash, really I think the two main reasons was, number one, it felt, at least to me, you know, I don't know if anyone else will sympathize with this, but to me with the Xbox One thing, it felt like the cool stuff they were saying, they thought of it on the spot after. Like they said, we're going to have 24-hour check-ins. And then Don Match was obviously, and honestly, Matt Booty was worse. It was like so arrogant. And then they said, well, yeah, but there will be friends sharing. And then any follow-up question, and they didn't have an answer. So to me, it felt like they made up friend sharing to cover their ass. And then the other problem, and I think a lot of people thought that as well. And then the other part of it was the messenger. Steam gets away with being all digital because it's a private company that people trust to not always be about shareholders, and that's changing a little with this mega yacht maybe, but like Steam has this buy-in as this brand you can trust. And especially by the end of the 360 era, there were less and less exclusives. And I just think it was the wrong company to say we're going to take something away because no one trusted them. Right. And I think in hindsight, and this is what I hope PlayStation figures out before they pull a similar PR disaster or commit to a similar PR disaster, is if you think the future's all digital, then your own argument works against taking away discs. Because if you think discs are going to go away, you don't need to take them away yourself. Let them go away over time. Like they could have announced, there's friend sharing. Xbox One focuses on digital, and that's our advantage over the PS4. But you can still use a disc, and there's no DRM check-in. And over time, we just think you won't buy discs anymore. And I think that's the argument I think PlayStation 6 should be making. Like if Sony's saying whatever number they pull out of their ass is 80%, 82%, you know, digital, but really they're counting DLC, and so it's not really that accurate of a number. But like let's say it was 90%. Even more so, no need to take away the disc. If it's 90% digital, then over time, the disc will just go away on its own, and you don't need to take it away unless you want to control people. At least that's the argument I would make for PlayStation as well, as like, then like if it's about controlling prices, well, if 90% digital, you already control the prices. 90% digital. Disc really isn't. It's just like, let them have. And so I think that's what happened with Xbox One. And when it comes to pricing, the reason Xboxes are currently so expensive is really, I think, mismanagement under Phil Spencer. I'm sorry, like the guy didn't buy enough RAM. Sony is very good, and this is to a degree something PlayStation will always be, I believe, the best at supply chains. I mean, it's Sony; they're a hardware company, and they just have that advantage. They just always seem to time the market right with when they buy a lot of RAM, how much they buy, how they negotiate. They just have that advantage. And so to a degree, I don't blame Xbox, but there were mistakes. And this is the same mistake Steam made with the Steam machine is the SSD. This is just one example, but I'm sure there's others if I tore apart a Series X and looked at everything. But this one's the most obvious one. Like they, people watching at home, here is one of those, NVMe SSDs, everyone says is too expensive right now. And they are expensive. Actually, this one, for nerds, is an Optane drive that Intel doesn't even make anymore because it failed. But this is a normal sized SSD. This is what you can put in a PS5, right? You can buy one off the shelf and put it in. Xbox uses the tiny mobile one that's like this big. I don't know why. The Series X is big enough to fit a normal SSD. And the Steam machine does this as well. It uses the same SSD the Steam Deck uses. And I believe they did that so they could just buy one SSD and use it in everything. And that wasn't a big deal 5 years ago because they were kind of the same price per gigabyte. They are now not. Now that there's a crunch, this will be like $200-300. And then the little one will be $400 or $500. And so
yeah,
I don't know why they did that. I don't know why they even have an SSD in it. You could just solder it to the motherboard. They don't even let you upgrade it anyways. I don't know why. Yeah, that's the sort of stuff where I just think Sony thought out the design and how to make it as cheap as possible. Like even the RAM, it's like 10% slower than the Series X. But what does that mean? You can get this cheaper. You can get this spec from many other companies that can make the RAM, that's slower than what the fastest Samsung memory is or something, right? And so I think that a lot of this has to do with Xbox not planning ahead, making a few mistakes in the design. And, I also just don't know how many they're even making anymore. I think they're kind of done with this gen, and I got this from NX Gamer, who was recently on too. Or at least he agreed with me. We said a couple of years ago, we don't think they're really making them anymore. Like we think there's kind of a stockpile of APUs and they're just buying RAM to finish whatever's left in a warehouse. They're not selling that many. So that's why it's expensive. I don't think they care that much about selling more this gen. When it comes to next gen, I don't know. I'll have to see the final design. I don't think it will be cheaper, but I don't think it needs to be like $2,000. I think it could be $1,000. I think if they subsidized it, it could be $800, $900. I really don't think it needs to be as expensive as people think, but that's all going to depend on what happens with the AI bubble and that. So when people tell me I'm like promising them some cheap console, it's like, I don't even know if we might be in the middle of World War III next year. So I no promises anymore. Ask me in 8 months what I think the price will be. But there's no point in me making a price prediction that I stick to right now because so much is going to change. I don't know. I don't know. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of the conversation, like I've been thinking about this a lot, is like the subsidy aspect of it, because it is supposed to be this open device, and they've, the Magnus chip, which you broke. Congratulations on that, by the way.
I thought it was the PS6 at first, by the way. So I'm not perfect, everybody. Actually, I didn't. I thought it was. I wasn't sure. I knew it was either Xbox or PS or PlayStation. And this is where I admit my own faults, people. I knew PlayStation would get more clicks. So I said it's one or the other, but the title said PlayStation. I did eventually fix that within a week, and now I know everything about them. But, sometimes you don't know for sure.
It's really interesting because I had a different code name for it. But the code name I had for it was for the actual box, which is now codenamed Helix. Before it was codenamed something else. And people were like, "Oh, the next Xbox codename Magnus," and I was like, "It's not codename Magnus. What are you talking about? It's codenamed this, But
Sometimes like AMD things like will have 4 different code names, like
even
within the same company, so that no one knows if they're working on the same project. So
yeah, I've noticed Xbox does that now as well, to also try and isolate leaks to a department.
mm-hmm.
So now I'm like, that's what I'm nervous about saying what the code name was. But then they're like, because I went to Xbox and I was like, I'm going to leak this, and they were like, oh, that's not the code name anymore. And it's like, you'll be wrong, you know. Like, well, it used to be the code name, but now they've unified it and publicized it under Helix, right? But when I was like initially looking into some of this stuff, and I was like, and they announced it was going to be this PC hybrid kind of thing, I was like, well, in that universe, you kind of you're removing the subsidy, because if someone opens their Xbox and goes straight to Steam or Epic Games or wherever else, you're not going to see a penny to recover that subsidy, right? So, with the memory crisis going on and the margins battered, and you've got Satya Nadella and Amy Hood out here saying like Xbox needs to return to growth and all this, I'm sitting there wondering if like having an open box even makes sense anymore. But can they even achieve that? Because with Magnus, they've got to be, are they building those chips already? Are those contracts in place? They can't really back
quarter 2
now.
Quarter 2 of next year is when production starts.
Right. So, but
they're going to make them, by the way, like, because they get in line at TSMC and sign contracts years ahead of time. So the designs, and I don't remember, I don't know if I got this verification for the PlayStation, although I have to assume it's locked in by now. But I had a source tell me, like, I don't know, I put out a video about this a few months ago or something, like Magnus is locked in. They aren't changing the design. So whatever they've decided a few months ago, that's what it is.
Well, Asha was even saying herself, like, it's going to play your PC games. She said that in June. So this is post reset. So clearly they're still pushing ahead with it. But I'm just sitting there like,
and that's why it's so funny, right? Phil Spencer designed this open box, and now Asha's got to turn it into what she wants. But the design's there. It's just what software they can change the software. You know, that could change. But the design itself of the chip is always going to be the Phil Spencer chip, which I don't think the chip is badly designed, by the way. I think it's actually pretty good.
I suppose it comes back to what you were saying like before about they're not making many of these things. So part of me is just wondering, like, is this going to be like a super premium kind of device that sort of sits in a kind of niche, similar to the Xbox Ally? Because they haven't sold millions of these things. They've sold hundreds of thousands of these things.
Very little. I've followed at my contacts in retail. Very little Xbox Allies have actually been sold, and it's because they haven't made a lot of them. Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, is the Xbox Ally the test case for Helix, where it's like, we don't sell millions of these things, we sell hundreds of thousands of these things, and but at much better margins potentially, and then really the business goes to Steam and publishing, you know, which is kind of the antithesis of what Ash has been saying with regards to growing the console, growing the core. But I just wonder if like the hardware landscape even facilitates some of what she's saying anymore. It's like, and again, to bring it all the way back to what you were saying about the way the gaming industry's evolved, like I wouldn't have thought in a million years we'd be sitting here debating the idea of consoles being a niche gaming thing now in a universe that's basically dominated by PC and iPad, you know. Because all the little kids, they're just on iPad. They don't care about consoles.
Or whatever that one console was that outsold the Xbox last fall. That like, it's basically a little Kinect cube. The
NX Playground.
Yes,
that, I think it's called. Yeah.
All right. So I'd say two things to this. Number one, addressing the volume thing. So I get, so like you and your fans will be happy to hear this. The way Magnus was designed is it shares parts with the desktop chips. So like if you look behind me there, like that AMD graphics card that I'm like kind of trying to light up in red on the upper side there, that's a 9070 XT. And that thing is like the current mid-range, really lower high end, I guess, AMD graphics card. You know, it's usually $600 to $800. The successor to that, I don't know what it will be called because that one's called 9070. So do they go to 1070? I don't know what the name of the next gen will be, but it was supposed to be some $550 graphics card that will be like 20%, 30% faster than that. And that's supposed to come out mid to late next year. At this point, do I still think it will be 550? I don't know. Those plans were from 24. A lot's changed since then. But I'll have Gerard put the AMD Magnus early diagram on screen for when people watch this. But it's literally going to share a chip with the Xbox. And so this is the most manufactured dedicated graphics card AMD will make next gen. I don't know how many that means they will sell. They're smaller than NVIDIA, but I think it's safe to say at least, it'll be in the millions, maybe tens of millions total if they make it for many years. And well, that means because it's literally sharing the same chip, that if Xbox wants a ton of consoles, they can get a bunch of them. And if it doesn't do well, they can sell them back to AMD and AMD can manufacture them into graphics cards. The way it works is there's the graphics chip with the memory controller and, all the compute units that run the frames. And if it goes into an Xbox, they add a little CPU that's stitched to it. And then it becomes its own CPU plus GPU. On desktop, they will add a much cheaper, like tiny little die that basically is just HDMI out. So you can, and so this is different than last gen. I mean, last gen and really for many gens, you'll have these consoles share the design features of stuff that's in other products. This time, literally, it's the same parts. So this, and I think this was done intentionally because Xbox isn't sure about their future when this was designed. And they wanted something that was a bit more off the shelf and something where if they order too many of them, I mean, just to give people an example of how much like Series S and X's, especially X, is underperformed. I think it was this blog called Angstronomics. He had a lot of accurate leaks a few years ago. I think he's disappeared, but since then, he heard about the die shrink, the 7 to 6 nanometer like slim version of the Series X. I had also heard about this, and it ended up coming out 2 years after when we thought it would. Like now they're in Xbox Series X's if you buy them, and I believe it is because it took 2 years longer than they thought to sell the old version before they could, and so they want to avoid that next generation. But so, in terms of like how do they deal with how many they make? Well, the good news is this time it'll be a little easier, where they can make as many as they want and it's less of a problem. Go on.
I was going to say, like, there's a couple of things I heard about the plans for this chip.
Sure.
Which were true of the last regime, but I don't know if they're still true under Asher.
Go on.
And one of the things is they were, because the previous head of Xbox hardware was Roanne Sones. She's retired now. Now Asher's come in. But she used to lead the Windows OEM operation, right? So under the previous administration, the plan was potentially to have OEMs leverage Magnus to target regional markets so that Xbox wouldn't have to source its own RAM. Like, this is the supply chain issue you were talking about. Whereas, like, you have Asus make the Xbox for China and
really
and Taiwan and that kind of thing, right? So there was this OEM play that they were working towards, and even more so, I heard they were talking about selling it as a GPU which you could buy and put in.
Well, that's what I'm. That's they're talking about. It would just be an AMD graphics card, that
but with the Xbox console chip in it. So, like, you could build your own console in essence, is what I heard. There was something they were exploring. Now, obviously, I don't know if that's something.
Well, again, it shares parts, so there will still be the same chip sold in graphics cards. That's just
but it needs the Xbox console chip to run the console games, right? Without emulation.
Not necessarily. No, it'll be the same architecture. Now, could they do that? Maybe. Will be more optimized, probably, but no, it doesn't need it. That if it's limited to just some Xbox graphics card, it will be because of some licensing thing. It won't be because it has to.
I think that's kind of like where it was coming from, because I asked this question and they were pretty insistent that it needed that chip. But I don't.
Well, so here's what it might need
know.
it for: backwards compatibility. Maybe it will need to do a check on that to do backwards compatibility. But if it does, I still think that will be limited to Helix, and the CPU custom part they will use for a DRM check to run backwards compatibility. I doubt it would be the graphics card itself. Now, the bonus though is, and this should apply to pretty much all RDNA 5 products, is they will be really well optimized for AMD PCs next gen, because they're also doing it for, well, the PlayStation 6 as well, but specifically literally the same thing on Xbox. And so I think AMD's got a pretty big advantage in terms of like developer buy-in for optimizing for the architecture next gen. And that'll benefit Xbox as well. I think that's been a little bit of an issue with the Series X, is when I talk to developers, they're like, and they just openly say this, they say we build it on PlayStation 5 first, then we port it to PC, then we port it to Xbox, and that causes all sorts of unoptimized workflows going in this circular way. This time they can just make it almost literally for PC, and Helix will be the same thing, and so there should be less issues, I think. So yeah, I mean, look, I think what you're saying of like Asus would handle the launch in China, that's really odd to me. That sounds like I'm just being honest, that sounds like a bad idea to me, because that would make it, the only reason you would do that is if you plan to make, which is I guess what you said, very, very little of them, right? Like you would, because it's economy of scale. That's the impression
that I got.
Yeah, it's the economy of scale. I mean, you want to centralize that so that the price per unit is lower, not like just have all these random guys wheeling and dealing in different regions. So I don't know if that's still the plan, but I hope it isn't. This piece of content is brought to you by the Minis Forum MS03 workstation for local AI. It has a minimalist design that makes maintenance very easy, and it's powered by Intel Panther Lake with support for 2 NVMe SSDs, 128 gigabytes of RAM, and you can even add a PCIe card for low-profile GPUs or other network cards. And it's just really a very high-quality device in terms of feel and materials used. So if you are interested in this product, make sure you follow the links and the directions below to support Moore's Law's Dead and get the best price available on the Minis Forum MS03 today.
It's kind of, well, maybe this is why Rohan's not there anymore, but like it sounds like they were trying to emulate the approach they got with Surface, basically, where like Surface is this kind of like premium kind of feeling option for a specific segment of the market, like the fans and that kind of thing. They don't make huge amounts of Surface devices, right? And then they hand off the other bits of the business to Asus and whoever else. And like the Xbox Ally was the whole point of the Xbox Ally range was like data gathering. Like it was instrumental. Like I've got a whole PowerPoint presentation which talks about it in terms of it being like an experiment, where it's like we want to see how the market reacts to this. And obviously they've partnered with Asus. Is it Asus or Asus? Like some
say Asus. I don't know.
Some people in my company say Asus, and I'm like, is that how you meant to say it? I don't know. I would have always said Asus, But anyways, whatever it is, it's like the partnership with them on the Xbox Ally was like almost. It felt to me like almost like a test bed, not only just like testing the market, but also developing the Xbox PC app, which and the Xbox mode for Windows, which together, like from what I've heard, was put together in like just over a year. I was told that at Gamescom last year, and
I believe that.
They threw it all together pretty quickly, and it was all about data gathering, But again, it was under the old regime, and and kind of for me, it's like if you are pushing ahead with this model, like why make Gears of War E-Day console exclusive again? But I suppose if the idea is to have like, I don't know, a console ecosystem and then more of a Windows kind of ecosystem, because Windows is down too this year. Like Windows in their financials, Windows was down 4%, I want to say, and Xbox was down 11%. So it's like if you're a Microsoft shareholder, which is also like a big factor, is like Windows and Xbox and this is like a universe, again, to the central conversation of like the way things have changed over the years. Windows is a drag on Microsoft's profit margin. I never would have expected to live in that universe where
Yes,
like a
they're like a
shareholder's
server company now. Yeah.
yeah, they're an AI and server company. It's wild, right?
Well, they've done everything they can to piss off people who use Windows at this point.
Yeah,
And
they
it's
have.
bizarre because 10 was fine. I actually thought Windows 8 was fine too, by the way. I was not a Windows user.
I quite like Windows 8.
Yeah, me too. I think I had the least amount of bugs with 8.1 that I've ever had in Windows. Actually, it was very stable. And I think they've just really neglected their core businesses, and now they're not maybe their core businesses. And people are legitimately switching to Apple, and Apple now has the MacBook Neo, which is cheap. And they also, which no one ever thought that was going to happen. I remember in some recent interview, someone from the aforementioned Asus, they said, we always targeted the $700 laptop market because it was just above cheap, and we knew Apple would never make something below $700. And now they have, and they're losing so much market share. So Microsoft's really got to get its shit together, honestly, when it comes to Windows and Xbox, and their things need to work. It makes no sense that we're this far into Windows's life and we still have games that run worse on Windows than Linux. It makes absolutely no sense. Like, you are a software company and you're the main gaming OS in the world. So what is going on? And I think they are waking up, though. I think they're waking up. They're realizing over time SteamOS can take their market share, and if they lose that and all of Xbox to PlayStation, I mean, what identity do they really have? So the good news is I think they're
IBM.
Yeah, I think they're going to take it seriously, though. That's the good news. We'll see if it works.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It felt like, as someone who's covered the Windows and Microsoft ecosystem for the last decade now, it's the worst it's ever been. Like on the Xbox side and the Windows side, like the amount of anger about, we talk about like all the stuff with Xbox and stuff. That's like what my audience is cognizant of with regards to my content is usually Xbox stuff. But I do also cover like the Windows stuff and the AI stuff and just the general Microsoft ecosystem as well. And like, I've never known the amount of like consternation towards Windows. Like, Microsoft's always been this sort of maligned company since the antitrust thing in the 90s, but people never trusted them, rightfully so. They've earned that negative perception over years of neglect and shitty decisions, frankly. But I've never known it this bad, especially on the Windows side. I've never known it to be this bad.
And it was pretty bad in the Vista era. You probably remember, I don't know if they were in England, but those ads of like, I'm a PC and like, I'm a Apple, and like Justin Long plays them. Yeah. So like, it's been bad before, but I think I agree it is worse than even then. Now it is worse. And
I do think something changed though in December and November, and I've talked about this on my show, is like Satya Nadella hired a new C-suite position to sort of run the Microsoft business side of things, so Satya could take a broader view of the product side. And I think as part of those early explorations, we got like a blog post, I think it was in January or February, from the Windows team, where they were like, it was basically an apology talk. It was like, we know we've messed up, and they put out a blog post on Friday too, where they were like, here's what we're doing for Windows. What's his name? Is it Pavan? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He's the new lead for Windows. He put out a blog post and he was just like, we've got a big focus on performance, like all the things you were just saying, like gaming performance. I think SteamOS has given them a big kick up the backside. And I don't know how accurate StatCounter is, but like StatCounter at least was reporting that Linux hit 10% market share in the United States for the first time ever last week.
I know, and I'm hearing this, like I talked to some contacts at Best Buy, and they will say to me, surprisingly, they're like, yeah, I mean, look, people come in, they'll have issues. a big thing that's going on right now is Microsoft's trying to force everyone to upgrade to Windows 11 by just arbitrarily like saying Zen 1 can't run Windows 11, even though of course it can. Like, what are we talking about here? And so like this just happened with my mom, and luckily I got them a GeekCom laptop because I have a connection to a sponsor, so they now they have a Windows 11 PC, but they were considering switching to Linux, like my boomer parents. And like, I talked to people at Best Buy and I'm like, is this really a thing? Like people coming in with their old PCs that can't upgrade to Windows 11 and they go to Linux, and they're like, yeah, they actually are. Like surprising. It's not most, but like I would say they were like 1 out of 4 people is legitimately installing Linux, even though they've never used it in their life and they're 60 years old. And that half of the time they're like, seems to work fine. So this is a real thing that's happening.
I mean, if all you need it for like is web browsing and web processing maybe occasionally, or editing a PDF or something like that, like it's completely fine, I mean, people do it on their phones these days. Mm-hmm. And like, not to get too philosophical about the way Windows has gone, but I do think a big part of it is like them being so like, oh my God, we're a server company now, and these other aspects of the business have just suffered this hardcore neglect. People clown on Microsoft for buying Activision Blizzard, but I'm sitting here wondering, like, does Xbox even exist if it didn't have Activision Blizzard now? Like,
well, I think you might ask, will it exist either way? I mean, like, or will Xbox become a subsidiary of Activision? Like,
it's already happened in some ways, but like, this is one of the things that like I'm investigating right now, is this concept that like they'll do to Xbox what Sony did to PlayStation, which is turn it into a wholly owned subsidiary. So like they become more responsible for their own destiny. Mm-hmm. Like Microsoft bailed out Xbox when the Red Ring of Death happened. Mm-hmm. If it was a wholly owned subsidiary, they'd be free to control their own destiny. So there wouldn't be necessarily like this expectation of, because Microsoft shareholders expect quarterly growth. But that's not how gaming works. Games take years to make. Gaming is a cyclical market. So,
yeah, right. You don't get quarterly growth with Rockstar necessarily. Just they might because of GTA Online, but if we're being honest, it's really every 10 years or 15 at this point, a GTA comes out, and that's where they make all the money for the decade, is from that big release. It's,
and, it's like Xbox has Call of Duty, and it's like, but if Call of Duty has an off year, it destroys the balance sheet, right? Mm-hmm. Or at least like that top line percentage growth or whatever. So like one of the things they're exploring is like, do we turn this into a wholly owned subsidiary where we don't have to necessarily report this in the same way, and it doesn't affect the top line figure, which in Microsoft's current shareholder culture is this expectation of quarterly growth. And the accountability margin that Amy Hood imposed on Phil Spencer during the last couple of years to try and achieve that sort of like shiny, key jingling thing for the shareholders, that's what led them to put up Game Pass to $30, which imploded the subscriber base. So I mean, it could be like the right move for them, but then we're also seeing like some of the weird decisions PlayStation's making right now is potentially because it's no longer sort of in a position to get bailed out by the flagship. They've kind of got to...
They've got to make sure the number is consistent, goes up, and fully controlled, because there's no one that's going to save them anymore.
Yeah, and they're sort of penny pinching every little bit of margin they can get, like getting rid of discs, where it's like, if it was me, like you were saying before, I would just let the discs die out naturally rather than rush towards...
I don't think it's worth the PR hit. I don't, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. But like, if you are like a bean counter and the CFO is basically running the company now, that little bit of extra margin is something that can go back to the mothership and be like, look, we're a healthy business. I don't know. It's one of them, and I think it's again, it goes back to what you're saying about Valve. The whole meme of Valve just sits there and does nothing and wins. It's because there's no shareholder culture extracting the wealth or extracting the culture out of the business. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Well, so yeah, a few things. I think I've always viewed Xbox Magnus, now called Helix, as this clearly, like the negative way I put it, you can look at it two ways. Like the negative way I put it a year ago when I started like talking about this a lot, maybe it was 2 years, it was probably a year ago, is it just seems like Xbox has 1 foot in and 1 foot out the door. Like every decision they make seems to be like, we're still here, but also we might leave, like, and just Helix itself, it's designed to share chips with the graphics cards. I mean, they have the escape cord to pull the parachute right there. Like if it doesn't sell well, AMD doesn't care. They'll just use the stuff they made to make graphics cards instead. Like you can see they have an escape hatch and they're ready for this to be the last generation. So, and that still to a degree seems to be true with some of the stuff they're doing. But on the other hand, another way I'd look at it is maybe the war is just over. Maybe they lost the war, and doing a console that isn't like the Dreamcast, where if you bought it, you're screwed, but doing something where it's a bridge to PC makes a lot of sense though. So it's like a consolation prize. Like you get this, it plays your old Xbox games. This is the last one. So you're really going to want it if you want to play those for the next 20 years. But at the same time, don't worry. A lot of your library migrates to PC, and maybe we'll make less money if you buy games on the Ubisoft store on Helix or something. Maybe you will, which clearly that seems to be supported on it at least. Okay, but we would rather you get it still there than go to PlayStation. And it's kind of like Dunkirk. If it's not perfect, but if we can at least retreat our user base away from here, at least it doesn't go to zero. Maybe it goes from whatever it is now, 40 million to 20. But 20 million is a lot of people you can make money off of every year. And if we lost all of it, what a mistake this would be. And that's something I've talked to like Colin Moriarty a lot on his PlayStation podcast a lot, is because he seems to agree with you. He's like, I just don't see how Steam makes sense on this console. But I go, but any amount of money is better than no money. Like any amount.
This is exactly what someone just said to me recently, because I put out an article the other day about the Xbox Ally documents that I got, where Microsoft's kind of like analyzing how that's gone. And they were like, someone at Xbox messaged me and they were like, you've buried the lead here, because I was, my article was arguing that a ton of people, they bought the Xbox Ally and then they went straight to Steam, and Microsoft didn't see a penny, which is fine because Microsoft makes some money on the Windows license potentially, or Asus makes money or whatever. And I was just thinking like, but if Xbox Helix, which is supposed to sell millions of units, in the old model, if a significant part of those games go to Steam, then Xbox is kind of doing its, the developers and customers that have invested in its ecosystem, Microsoft's potentially doing them a disservice because they'll be a smaller platform overall, right? But this person messaged me and they were like, 2 things about you've buried the lead here. First of all, 75% of Xbox Ally owners have Game Pass or PC Game Pass. 65% of them have Game Pass Ultimate. They have to use the Xbox ecosystem to access their subscription, and they're paying subscribers. So for them, that's stable recurring revenue. Second of all, they were like, because in the article it says that 2 to 4% of non-Xbox using people, this was like the way it was split down, it was like people who are known to them, i.e. current Xbox customers, they come into the Xbox ecosystem, but users who bought an Xbox Ally without first being an Xbox customer, only 2 to 4% of those use the Xbox ecosystem. And I was like, that's a bad figure. But they were like, that's actually a great figure. And that's like way more than we typically see on PC. Typically on PC, we see less than 1% come to the Xbox ecosystem. But on the Xbox Ally, 4% is actually significant amount of growth. And like in my head, that was a really small figure. But for them, it was like, that shows that there's something that works here. And there's just like things we have to improve on the details and that kind of thing. So, and still 75% were on, even if they were using Steam, they were still subscribed to Game Pass. So Microsoft's still getting money there. So it's clearly a complex set of data points, I think. Whereas like I can look at it and see like a failure, but for them, maybe better margins on a smaller amount of users, like you were saying, is actually a better business overall. And still, like, if they're selling Call of Duty on Steam, then to millions of people, they're still making money that way as well. So I think it's just sort of like the business, the era of this closed box has probably run away from Microsoft, and now they're going to evolve their business model to a point where they're sort of more diversified across a plurality of devices, which is kind of what Phil was sort of talking about before. But it's like you said, like they've still got this one foot in the door mentality. Like, why make Gears E-Day exclusive or Clockwork Revolution console exclusive? Because you're just kind of kneecapping your developers for a strategy that you're clearly not invested in. You know, it's really confusing, and I think we just at this point, I'm trying to make sense of it using what fragments of data I've got. At this point, I'm just like, it's like trying to decipher it's like trying to decipher some kind of foreign language or some kind of spy code. You know, at this point, I'm just going to sit there and wait to see how it plays out, because it's really tough to predict what they're going to do with all this stuff.
Never forget that they might not know what they're doing themselves. Like all too often, I think people like assume like these machinations, and it's like, aren't we talking about a company that's made tons of mistakes before? They could just not know, and justifiably to a degree. Like Phil Spencer's gone, and I will say, good. I'm sorry. Like for me, Phil Spencer's like, to my fans, like Intel's former CEO, Pat Gelsinger, when he came in, like whatever it was, 6 or 7 years ago, he was an engineer. So like, you know, a guy's guy, you know, who was promoted to CEO. He actually knew, he wasn't a suit. He actually designed things. He knew how this stuff worked, you know, and everyone had all this fanfare, and he ran Intel into the ground. I think he would have been a good CEO of Intel, to be fair, 15 years ago. That's when they needed him. But at a certain point, you don't need the engineer in charge. You know, that's not what you need. And I think a similar thing happened with Phil Spencer. Phil Spencer would have been a great guy to be in charge of Xbox in 2007 entirely, and like just have total control over that their decision and their launch strategy was for Xbox One. He wasn't, and I think we can now safely say that what he tried to do with Sarah Bond didn't work, and we need someone new. So when we say we don't know what they're doing, they might be kind of building the plane while it's taking off because the pilot died. You know, like that might be, to mix three metaphors, that might be what they're doing. And, you know, one thing I'll also say is I think, and I've always thought this, Xbox will be at its best when they admit they are not PlayStation. And they've always had this kind of like little brother mentality where they're like, we are going to be the better PlayStation. You know, like what Killzone's going to be the better Halo. You don't beat Halo by being another Halo. Although I love Killzone, to be fair. But it's not Halo. It's not the same game. Not a good or bad, just not. You know, how do you outsell Halo? Just make a different game that's good, like Uncharted. It doesn't need to be the same game, you know. And Xbox is never going to be PlayStation. They're never going to have the supply chain the same way. They shouldn't. They're a different company. And so what gives me some hope, actually, since Asha took over, is they are acting like they know that now. They're acting like they know that they can't just throw their giant Microsoft trillionaire dick around and instantly win. That's not how this works. You're not going to outspend Sony, even though you have more money. They can win with less. That's just not how you're going to win this war. You just need to be something else. And so maybe E-Day only being on Series, you know, Xbox Series, is the start of a commitment to something. I don't know what they're committing to, but either it's one of the dumbest things ever. Like, how dumb will this look if E-Day is exclusive to Xbox Series X and Series S? And then in a year, Halo, the next Halo is just on PlayStation anyways. Like, how stupid will that look? Yeah. But maybe that's not what's going to happen. So I think they've got to commit to something. I think they can. I think, and I'm not telling you this is what they'll do. Xbox hasn't done a lot of things that I would have done. But if they make Helix kind of a hybrid device that runs some version of full Windows and it lets you install Steam, but every time you boot it up, it has the Microsoft Store. And here, this is a theory I threw out there that I still think this might be what they're going to do. You have the Microsoft Store, and it's front and center. You boot up Helix, it looks like a Series X, basically, the OS and everything. But there's like an Alt-Tab option where you go into a Windows mode and can launch Steam. But you do have to Alt-Tab, and all of the Xbox console optimizations, like shader delivery, all that stuff, whatever, that is in the Xbox app version. And so a game, if it's on both, might run 10% better or load faster if you bought it through the Microsoft Store instead of through Steam, or at least it's on Steam to make their app work as well as Microsoft. And Microsoft has an advantage because they're building the operating system for this. And what they could do is they could go to big publishers like EA, Ubisoft, probably not. I doubt Rockstar plays ball with anyone because they have so much money. And then they just go, all right, we usually take a 30% cut. We're now going to take a 15% cut. But can you just put every game on the Microsoft Store? And, if you do that, when people boot up Xbox Helix, the store will be front and center. They'll see all the Assassin's Creeds, all the Battlefields, all the Gears of Wars, and they'll be more likely to buy your game if you're one of the games on, the front of the screen. And yes, they can still get it through Steam, but you're going to get a smaller cut if they get it through Steam. So you're going to want to partner with us here. I think that's enough to do what you were talking about. Like, they're not PlayStation. We need to stop thinking about it like they need PlayStation levels of success for this to be a success. If they can have half of the people that would buy it on Steam on this device now buy it on the Microsoft Store, huge win. And so I think they can do that. And if they do that and it plays all your old Xbox games, it's not going to outsell the PS6, but it never was going to. I think you still have something here that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what the Xbox Ally is, right? Like when you boot it up for the first time, it's got Xbox mode on it, and it defaults to the Xbox PC store, and that's the first thing you see. So if you wanna set up Steam, it's like it's if you're a completely casual user, you're probably not going to bother. If you just want to get straight into games, especially if you've come in from a console adjacency kind of mindset.
And especially if they make it work well. The problem with like games for Windows Live was it worked like shit. Like, I mean, if it works well, I think I don't use Epic because I have to use Steam, although I do prefer it. It's because the Epic app sucks. I mean, it sucks. The games run worse. It's hard to Alt-Tab. Everything about it sucks. It's probably logging all of my keystrokes. I just hate it. So if they make it work well, I think all too often people underestimate. Like, people are buying this because it works better. It's not because they're like biased or something.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of they call it dog fooding, where for those who don't know, like where like a company forces its employees to use their software for testing purposes. And because I cover Windows and Xbox, the ecosystem, I've sort of forced myself to use Xbox PC. Sure. But I've become like one of the few Xbox PC first gamers on Earth, probably. There are dozens of us. But just tracking how much it's improved. It has improved a metric ton since I started using it. If we go all the way back to the Windows 8 days, where the Xbox app didn't even deliver games, and I remember the first time they started putting games on the Microsoft Store, Windows 8, and it was like the store didn't have the code necessary to understand that an app package could be bigger than 900 megabytes or something like that. So when it was trying to deliver like Quantum Break, it just wouldn't work. It was just like, huh? How can an app be gigabytes big?
To my memory, the early Windows Store games couldn't play games in full screen.
Maybe.
It's not a thing anymore, but there's a thing called SLI or Crossfire where you could run a game off of 2 graphics cards. It only works if you are in full screen mode. And so it just instantly broke that. Almost no one did that. But, still, like, just stuff like that. Like, this can't be in full screen mode. What the hell? Why?
Yeah, it's been a journey to get to where it is now, but now it's at a point where I can install a game off the Xbox PC store and just have no issues, and it's almost like a lot of those early frustrations are just no longer present. And then there are benefits on top, like, Game Pass, for example. And I think Game Pass is probably the best alternative aspect that they've got when compared to Steam. you know, in an economy that functions entirely around free to play service games, I think Game Pass is like the only real, you know, moat around that potentially. But you know, but all those early frustrations I had with Xbox PC, they just don't exist anymore. Now it's like I just open the app and then install the game and then play it. Like I don't have those. There was all these kind of issues that used to happen, like the downloads would hang, or you know, the app package wouldn't work, and you couldn't access the files to put mods in and all that kind of stuff. They've fixed a lot of that top level stuff. I think the problem is now is kind of like almost like what the problem they had with Windows Phone, which is like 90% of games just don't ship there. You know, if I want to play a lot of upcoming games, you have to go to Steam on PC because the developers don't think it's worth the effort. It's especially true of indie games. Like,
oh yeah,
Steam is the king for high quality indie games.
Well, and I've talked to game
Xbox
devs.
PC has nothing.
A lot of people might think that it's like, oh, I designed this game for PlayStation, and then I also rewrote some of the code to fit on the Switch too, and then I'm going to put it on PC. That's actually not how it works with PC. Like launching a game on the Epic Store and Steam and Windows is like if you put this on like Series X, PS5, and Switch 2. Like it's not quite as hard as if, you know, there's some where, you know, but because it's like the way it downloads from Steam, the way it gets updates through Steam, the way it has to handle certain things through Steamworks or not. And then you go to Epic, it's basically like launching on another console again. And that's why people just go to Steam a lot, especially if it's an indie dev, is it's like they don't want to make it like there's like, you know, they don't want to make it like if Sega still made consoles and like Atari still made consoles, because that's what it's like porting to some, if there was an Atari or a Sega still, if it's on Epic and Steam and Windows. So Microsoft needs to, and I think you've talked about this, right? They need to make it so Windows is store, or the Xbox Game Store on PC is seen as a genuine alternative to Steam that you would choose like a coin flip. Like you don't really care if it's on there or not. And no one else has been able to do that. But if they could get to even where like 1 out of 3 people didn't care which storefront it was on, I mean, the amount of money that would eventually print is huge. And I think that's got to be the goal if they have any brain in their body with Helix.
I think PC is where they see their future, definitely. I mean, the Xbox, the emulator for the Xbox backwards compatibility, which has just hit Steam, like it's got 4 OG Xbox games on now, but like the long-term view is that eventually this will run Xbox One games, you know, and they'll be able to grow the Xbox PC store app problem using backwards compatibility via this emulator potentially. And then you've also got things like Positron, which is going to be announced pretty soon, I think in the next month or so, which is like this, you put the disc into your Xbox and it gives you the digital license.
Need a quick, reliable, and affordable PCB for your next project? Well, JLC PCB's full stack ecosystem makes it seamless, taking you from 1 to 4 layer designs to fabrication and SMT assembly under one login. 1 to 4 layer PCB start at just $2 at JLC PCB as well, and are backed by A-grade material, stage-by-stage AOI, and flying probe reliability. You get prototypes in as fast as 24 hours, global delivery to over 180 countries, and an engineer-friendly instant quoting process. So if you want to support Moore's Law is Dead and actually save some money, new users can receive $123 in coupons. So check that out through the link below. And by doing so, you are supporting the channel just by clicking through that link. But of course, supporting more if you use one of those coupons at JLC PCB today. And so I know you were the person that broke this story. Am I correct? Or
no. Oh, well, the person who broke it originally was an Xbox cloud gaming developer who makes a third-party cloud gaming app, which is better than Microsoft's app. And when he's data mining it to get the code necessary for his app, he found these code snippets which are talking about Positron, which is this digital program. And Tom Warren at The Verge investigated it. Shout out to Tom. He investigated it and found out more details about how it works. And according to him, you just put the disc into your Xbox Series S and X or an Xbox One, and it just attaches a license to your Microsoft account, and that's it. You got a digital license.
Is that how you do it on your Xbox One and then you get it on PC?
Yeah, like
that's funny because when I heard about this, I didn't know all the details. I hypothesized to my brother on my podcast. I'm like, the way they could do it is if you have the console, you put the disc in, it gives you it. The disc doesn't work anymore on other devices, but now you get it on PC. So that is how supposedly they're going to do this then.
If the game's Xbox Play Anywhere today,
I see.
It needs Xbox Play Anywhere. So then you get the license on cloud and PC. If it's not Play Anywhere, then I think it's more like it's going to be like the emulator. So like the backwards compatibility emulator, which they've just shipped on Windows now, I think eventually that will get to a point where more and more games show up on that platform that are backwards compatible. And then through smart delivery, Microsoft could sell those backwards compatible games as their own games, and you don't really see it. You don't even, like, the end user doesn't even see it as like, oh, this is running in an emulator. They just see it like any other game, right? So I think that's their play to sort of fix that issue of like the legacy games, and also coming back to what you said about having a bridge to a PC ecosystem, an OEM Xbox ecosystem, where like the responsibility to deliver affordable hardware is not necessarily on them anymore. They can ship that out to third parties. Potentially, that was the old model under Phil, but it seems like they're still going ahead with it under Asher, and otherwise I don't think things like Positron or backwards compatibility emulator, or maybe it's just part of it. Maybe they're just like, if we can't be PlayStation, so let's just be in as many places as possible and see what happens, I suppose. I mean, I kind of like that personally. I like the idea of having as many games as possible on my Xbox Ally, and when a game's not available, cloud is fine, for a single player game. Even multiplayer. I was playing Battlefield through cloud on my TV, like just to test it out, and I was like, this is actually playable. It's actually viable. But yeah, it's then it comes back to digital rights then, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the big conversations right now. Is PlayStation's kicked that off. You mentioned everyone's like, well, if everything's digital and everything's clouds and we can't afford RAM anymore and all the RAM's going to servers, they've kind of perpetuated a problem where ownership becomes this sort of thing of the past, I guess, which also sucks. So I suppose
I think that part of it's probably going to have to be solved where it should have always been solved, and that's for the legal side. I mean, governments just need to set a regulation. They just need to say, hey, if you say someone bought something, they bought it, and also it's retroactive. You can't just try to pull the rug out now. So and at a minimum, if something happens, you need to justify why they can't download it anymore, and then you give them the money back. Like, I'm sorry, you said they bought this. Okay, well, I don't care that you now want to pull this server offline or like not host this game download anymore because only one person downloads it a day or something. You now have to give them $60 back if that's what they paid 20 years ago, and maybe there will be some moratorium, like 20 or 30 years. Look, we don't expect you in 2300 to have servers hosting this crap still, unless you want to. But there's I know it's kind of like copyright law or something, like 50 years or like that needs to happen. And the funny thing is if that does happen, there might be a mad dash to go back to disc anyways, because that's the cheapest way to let people, to not have it be your problem if you're Sony, Well,
we're kind of seeing this already, like because PlayStation's kickstarted this huge debate about it, and it's kind of coming off the back of the Don't Kill Games petition wave, with which was started by Ubisoft taking The Crew offline, right? Not too long after it launched,
mm-hmm.
And then there was that whole Stop Killing Games movement in the EU, and it's kind of in people's conscious mind now about like, hang on a sec, we bought these games, and in the terms of service, it's always said like they can take them away for any particular reason. And I do think like absolutely there should be some kind of regulatory framework for digital ownership, digital reselling too. Like if you own something, you should be able to sell it on or share it more easily. you know. And I think this is an area where, you know, with Xbox is doing this Positron thing, which is like, yeah, you can get digital benefits using your disc, and the disc's still functional. If you take that disc and give it to another Microsoft user, then they get the license. It transfers off your account, right?
Oh, is that how it works? So the deal is, if someone puts it in, it transfers, but then you better not give the disc away.
Yeah,
I guess
like, that's how it would work if you have the disc in real life, right?
No, that makes sense too, because that I think people underestimate the power of doubt. Like, you could sell your disc and say just play it offline, but you don't know if they'll ever put it online, and if it does, instantly pulled from your account. I honestly think that's enough of a deterrence where it will work, you know. And ultimately, I mean, if it's an old game, who gives a shit? Like, are you worried about the sales of 360 games, or like in 2030? Like, what amount of money are you even saving by like letting all your 360 games just get traded around? You're not even making money off it anymore. So I think that could work. That's interesting. I'm excited for that then.
I mean, that's how it's built to work. I don't have the details myself. This is like from Tom Moran's article, but if it does work like that, that's pretty much how, like, you know, how we shared games back in the day as kids, or how Sony's famous. This is how you share a game on PlayStation works. Give someone the disc, they get the access to it. That's kind of how it should work. But another line of inquiry that I'm going through right now is Microsoft wants to sort of make it easier in general to access their stuff. And one thing I've heard is they want to decouple Xbox from Microsoft. Even more, to the point where you don't even need a Microsoft account to play on Xbox, you know, because at the moment you need, if you're,
that seems weird. I don't know why you would do that.
I think they're gonna do like an Xbox account thing, I think. Right, it's like because some people just don't want anything Microsoft, and they see that as a barrier now. So if like they do become this a subsidiary, maybe it's like, you know, you don't have to use a Microsoft store anymore, and we can have our own gaming-focused delivery systems that are more optimized for delivering games. And I do wonder, like, how much decoupling is going to potentially happen there. But there's so many moving parts to this, and I agree with you completely. They know they can't compete with PlayStation head on, so they've got to do something different. And I think a lot of these things like Positron, PC gaming, Game Pass, these are the things that differentiate themselves against Steam, against PlayStation, this sort of stuff, where they have lost the war, so to speak. But I think they can still have a business there if they can just deliver the quality that people expect, I suppose.
So, and I just, like, when you said what you've heard about Positron, I immediately, by the way, was just typing to several developers like, wait, is this true? Is this happening? One person hasn't heard anything. Another person, and I'll have this be a leak that I put in this podcast. You'll find this funny, actually, I think. This person tells me the Xbox reps that I talked to lately are terrified to say literally anything to anyone about discs or digital, because they don't want the PlayStation backlash to hit them. And they know if anything leaks and it's bad, or anything leaks that's good and doesn't happen, there might be a massive backlash they can't afford to try to weather, like PlayStation is. So they won't confirm anything. But this person says, as far as I'm aware, though, from some conversations, there is an internal disc to digital beta going on for Xbox insiders, or a very, very small private group. So I guess that's not confirmation that this will happen, but they are trying to do it. And I think that's exciting, because when I first saw these rumors of disc to digital, I was like, that'd be cool. And then I was also like, seems like that's a legal minefield. like I can tell you that not all games are play anywhere, and a lot of developers, if you just, without getting their buy-in, took their game and put it on another device, they would say, wasn't in the contract, we didn't agree to that.
Definitely.
And so I don't know if it will succeed, but I guess I can confirm that they are trying to do it, apparently. And if they did do that, I think Sony is underestimating how many people that might win over. Like, this is something I've parroted on my podcast for like a month now, every episode. Like, whatever it is, I think, like, I don't know if this is the exact number. I've seen it disputed a little bit. It's like, I don't know, something like a third to half probably of Xbox owners also own a PlayStation. And like 20 to 40% of PlayStation owners own an Xbox somewhere. And I think Sony's underestimating that. Like, yeah, okay, look, PlayStation's more popular. a lot of people probably play their PS5 more than their Series X, but they might have some games they bought for Series X. I have friends like this. And if you tell them the future is all digital and at PlayStation, it comes with a free middle finger, a lot of these people will say, yeah, but I have Assassin's Creed, whatever, Valhalla. And I think this is one of the games. I hope I'm like an idiot right now. And now I just got a license on PC. The generation's not over, but for the next year, I'm going to start moving back to Xbox Series X because I think all my games will carry over to my future PC. And I think a lot of people, not most, but if 10, 20% of PlayStation people do that, that's 20, 30 million people, well, yeah, like 5 to 20 million, depending on how you look at it. And that's, if Sony has an earnings where revenue's down 20%, that's a 5-alarm fire. So I think Sony's underestimating like how many people might do that. And if they go, well, Helix is going to be $1,000, PlayStation 6 is going to be $650 or something, I think there's plenty of people that will look at that. Not most, but plenty of people will look at that and go, yeah, but I keep my games. I'll pay a game's $80 now. So it's what, the cost of like 3 games or 4 games to keep all my old ones, and it's a little stronger than the PS6. I think they will choose that, and I think enough people will work with you. A huge problem for Sony. Now, the funny thing is I think Sony can fix this very easily. They just copy what Xbox is doing. Say that you own the game, let you back up games to hard drives maybe. They still have to, sign into PSN when you install it every time, but maybe you back it up in case they ever pull it off PSN. You could, because you can still play PT if it's still on your PS4. You just can't download it again. So if you backed it up, you can still play it, I think. But they do that, and then they say, by the way, we're doing it to PS3 as well. If you put a PS3 disc in, believe it or not, I've been told they had an emulator for PS3 games since PS4 in the labs, by the way. Like they'll say, okay, you have to hook up your PS3 controller. But good news, we use Bluetooth all the way back then. So if you find a PS3 controller, pair it to your PS6, you can digitize your PS3 library and play them again. That's a huge selling point. That would be massive. But I don't know if they would do that. And it pisses me off because this is the easiest win. Like it would cost them nothing to be this cool. And I just don't know. Like, I don't know.
It really, like, the whole debate around this really bugs me, especially when you consider, like, we've seen this games are a cultural thing, right? And I think like a lot of these companies like Microsoft, and I've spoken to Microsoft executives about this, like you see gaming in too much of a utilitarian context. It's a cultural context. This isn't software as a service. This is like culture, it's art, it's fandom, And Sony Music seems to know this because Sony musicians under their music label, they are selling their albums on cassette again. And vinyl and, and CDs. And there's this trend to analog right now. And they know there's this trend with Gen Z. Like Gen Z are buying cassette players.
It's going up.
And it's like, okay, we'll ship our albums on cassette again.
My girlfriend wants to get the Odyssey on Blu-ray when it comes out. So we always have it. Yeah. She mentioned that. Like, this is a thing. People realize that, actually, there's a reason to buy the physical version.
Yeah. And the people at Xbox I've spoken to about this whole thing, it's like the issue isn't the discs, it's the drives, the assembly lines, and that put together a drive that goes into your console. The market economies of scale, and all that kind of thing. It's not, they can't justify, in their view, they can't justify continuing to make these drives, because the Blu-ray drive.
And you've heard this from Xbox people as well. Like this is a universal concern. Okay.
Yeah, this is like a universal thing. So like for people holding out hope that Xbox is going to keep, Helix is going to have a disc drive, I highly, highly doubt it. And I was having I was having conversations about this before I even knew anything about Sony getting rid of disc drives. It was like people at Xbox were hinting at me, this is probably what we're
I was surprised every time I saw a comment, do you think Xbox will pivot to physical? I'm like, did any of you think it was going to have a disc drive? I just assumed it's like my brother is a weird poll. My brother has a girlfriend now, and they're like, oh, can she come to Thanksgiving? It's like, yes, I assumed she would come. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's like, that's how, like, yes. Or like someone like, yes, you can bring your wife. Like, what are you talking about?
It's a no-brainer.
It's like, I wasn't aware people thought that Helix would have a disk drive. I just assumed for the past 4 years it won't.
Yeah. But like the thing that's, I suppose, cheaper is printing a disc, right?
Yes.
So if discs are not a great way to deliver a game in general these days because of the speed and
you just install it from
speed.
the disc though, but yeah
exactly, yeah. So like, but if you're installing from the disc, you might as well install it from a cloud potentially. And I know like people think like, oh, the cloud will go offline, but I don't see Azure going away in my lifetime or even 2 lifetimes.
Believe it or not though, and this is not me, I have Google Fiber. I'm not kidding. Like when I'm like, I'll have these PCs that I test and I'll have to reinstall all these Steam games to benchmark. And I will turn off it sending it through the Ethernet cable from my desktop through the house to it because it downloads from the cloud faster sometimes than my desktop can send it through my own goddamn house. That's not true anymore because I've got like really high-end equipment going through my walls now that can send it through Ethernet through like a controller box or something. But I'm like 3 years ago that was true. But not everybody's me. You know, there's people that will live. I know I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. Someone will live just, 100 miles away maybe, and they won't have it. Or certainly where I used to live in central Illinois, there will be areas with god-awful internet. And I don't know if you've ever tried to install a disc recently, but I have. And the game will take like 30 minutes sometimes to install off of the disc because of how slow it is. But 30 minutes is faster than 24 hours to download for some people, to be fair.
Well, even still, like, for me, like what they could do, and it's the vinyl and cassette thing isn't like an apples to apples comparison because you could make, this person said to me, you could make a vinyl record player in your garage using like random bits and pieces and a needle. It's not, it's old technology. It's trivial to make a record player, but making a Blu-ray drive's not so trivial. But what if like there was some kind of cheaper delivery method where, because printing the discs is not an issue. What if we could still have discs and it just comes with the game, which you could put onto a drive and like have a home NAS server or something like that, and it doesn't necessarily need to be Blu-ray. I don't know, maybe like Blu-ray has some kind of...
It would be Blu-ray. That's basically all that's left. I mean, they don't make anything else anymore, so it would be, and it would probably be the exact same Blu-ray discs they use for the PS5 right now that are limited to 100 gigabytes. I was
thinking more like, something like a Nintendo cartridge. You
want cartridges with the RAM shortage? Get ready for $100 cartridges.
With just the license on it, like for Positron or something.
Sure.
Because I think there's...
Yeah, but see, I don't like this half measure. I think when people say, and I there's a recent study, I think 93% of PS5 games can be played without ever connecting to the internet if you have the disc. So it's not true. Most games, I think it's worse on Xbox, but on PlayStation, that actually most do work. I think when people say 7% of games can't even work with the disc alone, I go, well, then let's fix 7% of the games, not remove our ability to own the disc. Like, it sounds like this is something I've talked about a lot recently. Like, if I was PlayStation, the way I would handle this is I would say, we're going to lean into it like vinyl. Like a new digital game is $80 next gen. And if you want the disc version, it's $100. But we're going to mandate it has the day one patch. And we're also going to mandate it comes with a booklet with like a little strategy guide in there like they used to on PS2.
Like the old days.
And look, it costs $20 more. So we're giving you something for, like, we have to ship this thing that's this big anyways. We might as well include a booklet that costs us 10 cents to make. But we're going to...
Vinyls cost 30 quid.
Exactly.
Yeah. I bought a vinyl yesterday.
Yep. Yeah.
I like 30 quid, but I want to support the artist. So
exactly. And so you could lean into this that way, and you would just go, look, we think most people will buy digital. The disc drive's optional. You can even attach the PS5 disc drive. It looks like one of those cars that has like the wrong color on one of the doors because it like broke and they didn't have the money for the right color to repair it. But you don't need to buy a new disc drive, and just know if you want the disc version, it will now always come with a booklet. It will now always be game complete. And you can play it offline, but it will now cost $100 instead of $80. And sometimes because it has to be game complete, actually, this happens with vinyls, when a game comes out, you can download Battlefield 7 digitally. If you want the disc version, that won't ship until a week after launch, and it will be in low volume at first. But that would be, the people that care about disc would think that's so much cooler than it is now. And it costs Sony nothing. It costs them nothing to do this. And that's why I go, this is about control. This is not about, I don't even know, like, which I guess is about money, but this is not about following trends. This is about control. They're not shutting down that plant in Austria either. They're just removing like 80% of the floor for making lenses. They're still going to make some Blu-rays for the foreseeable future there. So if it's mostly digital, whatever, that means you'll make less discs. I mean, it's already an issue actually where like Resident Evil Requiem, the disc version sold out, like, you know. So I don't know. That's
you could even open the licenses up and let some other company handle it.
Yes, there's like in Minnesota, apparently there's a Blu-ray maker. Just like work with them, make them some subsidiary that makes small runs of discs for indie games who can afford it and whatever. I mean, there's like a company that I think they might have just stopped. I know this again from Colin Moriarty, but like they make some PlayStation games at Sacred Symbols, or I forgot the name of their studio. Forgive me, Colin, but and they would do runs of Vita games, like physical, because there's a company in Asia that stockpiled them, and they're like, we're only going to make 5,000, but for those that want the collector's edition, it is a physical cartridge.
That's how vinyls work. Mm-hmm. The vinyl I bought yesterday, there was like 4 different versions. There was like a plain black version, then there was like, you know, there's a cool version with a booklet that cost a little bit more money, and the vinyl had like a cool design on it, you know, and it was just like there was only 5,000 of these, you know. I think that's almost better, because it's like, okay, now it's a collector's. It's not just like I'm buying this mass market thing. It's like now it's a collector's item. And I think those are the backlash is so strong because those are your most passionate fans, the people who want to collect the stuff. And I think this is like, it's part of a wider discussion about the gaming industry becoming this telemetry-driven shareholder culture, sanitized software as a service kind of mindset about it, when gaming's supposed to be this cultural, artistic thing that the community owns. And I think we're seeing this backlash across the board. We're seeing it in Hollywood as well. Like the fact that like some of the biggest movies this year were made by YouTubers. that is a rejection of that culture, the sort of by the numbers culture, the corporate culture.
It proves that like we want something different than the focus group movies.
We want something real.
Yeah.
Obsession was made for less than $1 million. And that authenticity bleeds through every line in that movie. It's not perfect. It's got rough edges, but that's culture. Culture has these rough edges.
And even the Odyssey, which certainly had a big budget, he insisted on using film and all practical effects, no CGI. Yeah. I know you saw that. I saw it on Twitter. Like, for those who've seen the Odyssey, there's the witch scene. That was apparently all practical effects.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? And they used skin, and she actually molded clay under skin to make the pig faces. Like, I don't want to spoil anything for people, but it's like, and so it shows the movie with no CGI did the best. The Project Hail Mary also had almost no CGI, believe it or not. It's crazy.
Yeah. People are, because of AI slop and this just general fakery on the internet, people are desperate for something tangible. And I think Sony, like, really uncharacteristically,
yes,
because like you said before,
they've
like,
made
Sony's
mistakes before, but they usually come around quickly, and I've never seen a more corporate-y initiative than this.
They lean into everything that people are pissed off about right now aggressively, and this is usually what Xbox does. It's usually, I mean, sure, the data says people are trending towards digital, fine, but usually Sony's very cognizant of the cultural impacts of these decisions and where the most passionate fans are, your core fan base. Like Sony's entire business since the PS4 era, since the backlash to the PS3 price point, has been like, we want to build this culture first business. And this is the kind of thing like Xbox fans have been crying out for Microsoft to do, but it's not in Microsoft's DNA. I think Steve Jobs said, like, Microsoft has no taste. And it's still kind of true, right? But Sony was usually the one that had the taste. And this whole disc thing is just wildly uncharacteristic for them. Like I was like so shocked when it was Sony coming out with this. By the way, we're killing discs, even though everyone's mad about digital and and people want authenticity and something tangible again. And Sony leaned in the opposite direction. It's weird because Sony Music, they're printing cassettes.
They've been douchebags before to artists, though. Let's not forget how many lawsuits there were with George Michael, sure, I think, and a few others. But no, yeah, I mean, it's funny. I said this to my brother recently. I'm like, I think a huge big tech backlash is coming. And I think some of the people in big tech think that this is the peak. And I'm like, oh, no. It hasn't even started, my friends. You think this is the peak? Oh, boy. And I said, Sony, I know this has nothing to really do with AI or really big tech, but you might have the PS6 become the big tech backlash console. Do you really want that to happen? Is that worth 5% higher profits? 5% is worth the downside of what could happen. And that's something I want to talk to you about now too, is, you see, I actually think there is a chance Sony will backtrack on a few things or do some things in return. Because I think the way they talked when they doubled down on killing disc, I don't know. They said words like cautious and we're going to have to give fans something back in return. So I feel like they know they have to nail it now, I hope. But I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just being too optimistic when I read into that. But I'm concerned they're going to look at all the money they make this year and it's going to be like, yeah, but you're always going to make so much money the year Xboxes cost $900 and the GTA 6 launches. This was always going to be a good year. So I don't think you can really read into the data and learn anything for the future this year. And I think they might be underestimating the power of the Vibe. If PlayStation was seen as the cool console. If it's not seen as the cool console, it doesn't matter if people mostly play digital. All of their friends, like whether I just had Mystic Ryan on, you're talking about this too. You have a big platform. No one that has been a guest from any console or really any podcast has been like, yeah, PlayStation seems pretty sick. Right now, everyone's like, this is the lame console. And if it launches as the lame console, that's kind of what happened with PS3. I don't even think PS3 was too expensive. It wasn't seen as cool at first. And it was more expensive and it launched a year later, and a lot of games that should have been exclusives and been there at launch weren't ready. So and it took them, it was really in 2008 or 9 when they the $299, what is it? Mike Butler or whatever the fake CEO was, that marketing. That's when they became the cool console again. And even if all of your data is screaming, this doesn't matter, it's the Vibe. And you're losing the Vibe, and this is the worst time to lose the Vibe because people want to be mad right now. They just do. I'm sorry, I've never seen so much anger, and they will happily make you the person they scream at. And then the second thing is, this is the easiest generation to not fuck up. All you had to do was make another PlayStation that has exclusives. And so I don't know. I don't know. And this is the generation where they're going to depend on exclusives more, and if no one buys their console, like this, I don't know. I don't know if you have anything else to say to all of that. I kind of was just ranting at a certain point there.
No, same. It's wild. I follow Brad Smith on LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. It's a big part why I have mental health issues, I think. But but LinkedIn is an awful social network, but a lot of Microsoft corporate people post there. So I follow Brad Smith, who's Microsoft president. And a lot of his posts are kind of they're all kind of data centers aren't that bad. This is what we're doing to make a nicer data center. These are our community-led data centers. This community-led. Community-led data centers. There's a whole thing. And he's it feels like they are very cognizant of how pissed off people are about AI right now. And not just the mild irritants of there's a Copilot button in Notepad, but also it's destroying local communities. It's blowing up electricity prices. And now it's
housing valuation too. Your house goes down in value.
It's absolutely insane. And now it's hitting consumer electronics and consumer prices of everything, supply chains. And there's still, to the public at large, there's no discernible day-to-day benefit of this technology. You know, that we said all these tech dudes, they're always like, oh, it's going to cure cancer, it's going to put man on the moon or Mars, and we'll have data centers in space and all this kind of stuff. For the day-to-day average person, nothing has changed in the positive. Everything's only been worse and negative, and big tech is the culprit. So I think the commentary on vibes is like, it's spot on. It's the right vibe, man. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Well, and your thing about like, if you announce AI's here and it's going to take 10% of people's jobs, and you know you're going to have to deal with slop, but we saw that after cancer was cured, you know, we might go, well, you did cure cancer, so I mean, you give and you take, and it's the same thing with disc, and this is why I think they have a big problem. That's just a ticking time bomb because of the vibes that just haven't hit them yet. Like anyone who has a PS5 already has it. You know, anything they're going to get this year, they were already going to buy. But what they're not seeing is the people that next year just start buying Xbox or Steam games more often. And by the time that happens, it's kind of too late maybe to reverse course, or at least reverse course in a maximally eloquent way, shall we say, like do it smoothly. And so I think they have to say something within a month. And I think they need to get Mark Cerny, if they can, bring back Shuei Yoshida to be in the video, just to like, as like a guy to like say, hey, we brought in the hostage negotiator. This is the guy's friend. Put down the gun, you know, like they need to do that. And they need to tell us what we're getting, because in an information vacuum, people are going to fill in negative stuff. And for good reason. Like if you had a friend, an analogy I made is if you had a friend text you something horrible and then ghost you, would you assume if you text him again, it'll be something nice? Because all you know is he told you something bad and now he won't talk to you. So that's what Sony just did by saying they killed disc. If they would have had Mark Cerny come out and do a 1 hour power hour video where he's like, guess what? You can digitize your games. You can even digitize your PS3 games. Your PS5 games will still work on PS6. You just use your old disk drive. PS6 only games won't, but even cross-gen games, like this is a thought I had they could do. The PS5 disc is the PS6 disc. It just is. But that means only cross-gen games will work, because if it's made for PS6, it's going to be 200 gigabytes. There's no point in having a disc for it. Like if he said, I know you're giving up disc in the future, but in the meantime, all of your games are now on your console without you having to switch discs, and you can share them. And there's all this cool stuff we're going to give you in return for letting us take away your discs. But they didn't. They just told us the bad. And so I know what they think they're doing, but you know, their plan was to wait till Xbox had a bad week and hope the bad Xbox news drowned out the bad PlayStation. But I think they did the opposite. I think the bad PlayStation news made the bad Xbox news not really get noticed as much. And if they don't have like a full like Mark Cerny explainer on how next gen ownership will work within a month or two, I'm gonna be blown away that they actually think the silent treatment is a good idea. Anyways, moving on. Herman's March writes in, if PS6 doesn't come with a disk drive, what do you think of the idea of Xbox using Positron to convert PS5 discs to a digital license for Windows? I know this sounds absurdly pie in the sky, but what better way to weaponize their open platform by giving users of your opponent's console the ability to port their games forward digitally onto Xbox with a voucher for a PS game that's on Steam? I don't think it'll be on Steam. If Xbox is a true PC hybrid like we're hearing, then what legal technical barriers could there even be for not allowing Xbox to run a Steam game with a mere PS? Yeah, I mean, I think there could be some legal hurdles there. So I guess I'll just give my 2 cents. I think there's almost no way this happens, but I will say if they wanted a marketing win, there's a couple things they could do, and it wouldn't be widespread, but okay. Halo is now on PlayStation 5. They could allow you to do that. Like they could allow you to put the Halo disc maybe even in an Xbox. It can at least read what it is. I believe right there's like a thing where if you put a PlayStation disc in an Xbox, it literally pops up and says you're using the wrong console, like with a warning thing. So they could select like a Ubisoft game, although I think Sony would kill Ubisoft if they did this. They could maybe get 5 high profile games where if you have the PlayStation 1, it transfers to Windows. Xbox would be eating a bunch of money to do that, and it'd be all for marketing, but that's what I think. I don't know. What do you think?
One thing that I heard, like, I don't know how true this is, but like Xbox as for like quite a while now, Xbox has been shipping their discs with a unique identifier, like to the point where like, and this goes back to the Xbox One era where they were going to do this disc-based DRM stuff, because I was told some discs don't have this signature on them, which means they won't work with Positron, which suggests to me that whatever it is, and I don't know this is for certain, whatever it is, this digital signature they've been putting on the discs, probably it would need that to function maybe, but it'd be pretty funny if they did do something like that. But I imagine the legal hurdles are significant, and Sony's probably got all kinds of, publisher agreements that Xbox has to abide by, and Microsoft is, because Microsoft's such it's an enterprise, it's a business to business company. They are so aggressive on making sure all their legal stuff is, like you can't even invoice a pencil without going through legal in Microsoft. So it's like, I think like it's even if there was even the smallest risk of getting sued, I don't think they'd do it. But it's a fun idea, right?
Right. I think the only way that could work is if it's outside of anything Sony touches. So like maybe Starfield, Halo, and they get one big third-party game to play ball. But then it wouldn't be through anything PlayStation touches. I think they'd have to make it so you put it in an Xbox and then you get it. Because I don't think Sony could control anything there, because all they would be doing is verifying you bought the game and then giving you it basically on good faith. But there's nothing they could do to make sure you don't resell. But you could do that with a handful of games. Like you could say, look, Starfield, we're not selling many copies of these. And it could be like a per account thing. Or maybe they could even, there's probably some barcode on each PlayStation disc that the Xbox can read, where all it sees is a number, but it's unique. You could do something where it's tied to like a private key on your Microsoft account. So if someone else tries it, it doesn't work. Like one per disc. So I think they could do that. And I'm going to be honest, that would be hilarious. Like just if it was just 3 games, Starfield, Halo, something else, it would still be a huge marketing coup against Sony. So yeah, I think that they should, now that we're talking about it, will it ever be like some widespread thing? No, but they should do it with one game, because that'd be really funny. This piece of content is brought to you by CDkeyoffer.com. CDkeyoffer.com is really the best place to go to get reasonable pricing on Microsoft software, whether that's Windows 11 operating systems or Office products like the ones that I installed on this Strix Halo laptop that I was testing while I made this ad. You see, I actually use CDkeyoffer.com. I've used them many times. My family members use them. My friends use them when they're building new PCs. And that's because they've been a reliable sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead for years now. And so if you're looking to get, say, a new laptop, or you just finally want to get a legitimate key of one of the latest Office products on your desktop during back to school, use CDkeyoffer.com's offer codes Broken Silicon to save 25% on all Microsoft products. And then actually you can also use offer code DieShrink to save 3% on everything else on their website, like games as well. Once again, I want to thank CDkeyoffer.com for sponsoring this content, like all the other content that they've sponsored, and for making it easy for me to get a good price on Office on my laptop. It started with Pong writes in and says, based on Sony's comments at the shareholder meetings about any discs, do you think they'll try doing something like Tom suggested, like special releases for higher prices, like $120? So it's basically placed the price of the game to see how dedicated people are to keep supporting. Oh, so like charge more too to see if they will put their money where their mouth is. Well, again, I'll go first. At this point, and I've long said this, I can be convinced an all digital future is fine. Like if you let me transfer my games and I can still play my old games on the new console, so I don't have to have 2 consoles. If anyone remembers, this was with Xbox One as well, at least at first. If you had a 360, you had to have a 360 and an Xbox One under your TV because it couldn't play the 360 games at first. Same with PS3, which was just this thing that you had if you had a PS4 for like 5 years. Like I remember it was the GTA console for me for a little bit. And if I can at least still play my old discs on my new console so that I don't have 2 devices below my TV. Like if they did I can be convinced that future is cool. But I think that's the most likely thing we're going to see, is that Sony takes the backlash seriously and realizes they can't fuck around with the stuff they give us. At this point, I think it's unlikely they backtrack on disc. Maybe they'll go PS5 discs will keep being manufactured, but we're not doing PS4 anymore. Maybe they'll do something like that, or I don't know. I still think there's a world where they backtrack some. I still think there is, but I think it would be from the legal and publisher side, not because of the backlash from gamers. But what do you think? What chances do you think there are?
I think my buddy Rand, who does my podcast with me, he said that he knew as soon as because there was that long weekend where Sony didn't tweet anything, right? And people were kind of clowning on them for just ignoring it. And my buddy Rand was like, if they tweet something completely unrelated to this, that means they're never going to backtrack. If the first tweet they do after this is we're sorry, we hear you, then there's going to be a backtrack. And lo and behold, they've started tweeting again about random games, and there was even marketing Halo earlier. And it's kind of I think they're just going to grin and bear it, I think. But I don't know. I don't underestimate people power, though. If people keep hammering them, consistently for months, there was this whole meme about, people telling EA they wanted a new Skate. And every single post EA made on social media for 2 years was Skate 3, constantly. Eventually they made Skate, and it was kind of be careful what you wish for, because the new Skate is free to play microtransaction hell. But they did it eventually, so maybe it'd be one of them where people just keep hounding them for it, and eventually they do something and they outsource it maybe give the business to limited run games or something like that, and it's just yeah, we're gonna keep supporting this, but it'll be in limited quantities. I don't know, but I don't think a full backtrack I don't think that's on the cards, but who knows, man? Who knows?
Yeah, I think a full 100% backtrack is unlikely at this point. But the thing I keep coming back to as well is how easy it would be to backtrack. They're not ending disc production. They will keep making. Every developer I've talked to says, as long as our game launches before 2028, they say we can order new discs runs for the next 5 years, or they're still going to do some low volume capacity, and there's no reason they couldn't backtrack. It's just, I don't know, if what happens is it's almost like a PS3 situation where they really don't get that they fucked up until a year into the gen. This is what NX Gamer, who was just on, thinks is going to happen. Actually, he thinks they will backtrack, but it's going to be 2 years, 3 years after it's out, and they have horrible sales compared to expectations, and then they're going to sell a disk drive, and there'll always be the stupid external disk drive attached to it, or I don't know. I don't know about that, but I do think something's going to have to give, because I think right now they look at the volume of the responses and they're oh, it went down, so people are losing steam, and it's no, people have just written you off. And I think what they may find is something AMD recently found with RDNA 3 getting FSR support. There's this huge campaign. AMD couldn't post anything. And my favorite example is they posted some YouTube video with Mercedes, and AMD's we're using AI to make the next F1 Mercedes car do this. And then every comment is, hey, could you drive FSR support to RDNA 3? They couldn't. And then they turned off comments on their YouTube channel. And that's when the decision was made, I believe, where they had to do the stuff to support the software people demanded. You don't need 10,000 people to comment on everything. You just need all of the comments anyone sees on a marketing video for the next 2 years to be crap. And partners, and I've heard developers are doing this, are going to be yeah, I don't really want the marketing deal anymore. Because at a certain point, the CEO, and I think the CEO of AMD did this, went, Jesus Christ, guys, how much would it cost for us to port this software support to RDNA 3? What, $100 million? Do it. We're going to be $1 trillion company. Good Lord. What are we? But I don't know. See, Sony is a arrogant, old school, stubborn Japanese company, though. They're not American. Americans kind of people pleasers usually. Not always, but usually. And so I don't know. But I don't know if you kind of give your opinion on what you think about do you think that they would be, because you're an Xbox gamer, from the outside looking in, do you think Sony would actually be stubborn enough to watch 2 years of marketing be shit?
I mean, it's a tough one, you know. It's like you say, they're a stubborn company, but I think at the end of the day, if it does start to hit their bottom line, whether it's like through marketing or, you know, people actually boycotting it, like people say they're going to boycott it, but one of the things for me is like the big existential crisis the industry has is this shift to free to play, not only to free to play, but also people who don't monetize, people who go to free to play, and then they don't spend a penny because maybe they've got all the skins they want in Fortnite. Maybe they don't want to do any more gacha rolls in Genshin Impact, you know, that kind of thing, right? They feel happy to play completely for free, whether that's because they've already got all the stuff or because it's saturated or because they've you know, inflation and cost of living or whatever. So for me, it's kind of like, you should be doubling, you shouldn't be retreating from digital. You should be doubling down on it, because the retail presence is something that diversifies your business model. All you're doing here by like retreating from the disc-based arena is you are accelerating people, the smartphoneification of gaming. You know, this sort of, you're telling the next generation that Roblox and Fortnite are the default, and that the experience of like unwrapping a cool game at Christmas, that's the thing that's going away. Those users who come into your ecosystem and become nostalgic, high-spending adults, they are doing that next generation a huge disservice with this. So it might seem like a short-term great thing, you know, but all they're doing is accelerating the existential crises that the industry has all up. I think there will be a point where they just, either Sony will do it or someone will do it. Nintendo is probably going to, if anyone's going to exploit this situation, it's probably going to be Nintendo, because they want that market. They want the kids unwrapping the gift under the Christmas tree
also
market.
A much higher proportion of their sales are still physical.
Exactly. So I think if anyone's going to exploit this, it'll probably be Nintendo, and more power to them, you know.
Yeah. Girthmax writes in, there's so much nostalgia for the 360. So yeah, and this is an kind of an inside joke. I've been trying to use like Gen Z brain rot terms more and more just because it looks hilarious. And I do that. Like I'll say Doom, like if a bunch of people are being too negative, I've been calling them Doom Gooners or something like that. And so now people are doing it. But then also I use the word girthy because it makes people laugh. So this is a play on both of those things. But Girthmaxer writes in, and he says, there is so much nostalgia for the 360 generation with the people who remember playing Halo and Gears on 360, but they're now firmly in their 30s and honestly 40s. How much they are leaning on Halo and Gears as part of Xbox's future. Do you fear that Xbox is targeting a smaller and smaller audience who has less free time to play, rather than creating the new IPs for the new younger audience that will stick around?
Well, I've written extensively about this because I think like not only Xbox but also PlayStation have under-curated the next generation, because people our age having kids, got mortgages and all that kind of thing, and those like tired and stretched parents, they're putting their kids on Roblox and Fortnite, and you know, there is this situation where Fortnite users aren't monetizing, which is why advertising's become part of the conversation now. It's like when someone boots up Fortnite and they haven't spent a microtransaction for a while, do we show them an ad? Because that's the only way we could potentially monetize our audience. That's the business model. And because Sony and Microsoft have embraced the short-term race to the bottom, which is games like Fortnite and Roblox, they've saturated that out now, and they've left themselves with nothing, where Nintendo has actively denied Roblox access to its platform. You know, like Roblox wants to be on Switch, but Nintendo hasn't allowed them to be there, from what I've read, because they know that it's probably long-term damaging to their ecosystem. You know, and Roblox is a whole other discussion. I mean, I don't know if you've seen Roblox's share price this week.
No.
But they're down like 30%.
Yeah, I heard despite how much money they bring in, they're losing money. right? Like that's what I heard.
Yeah, they're losing enormous amounts of money, and also like shareholders are now nervous that Roblox was just a big flash in the pan kind of trend,
Probably.
and that like even like Roblox raced itself to the bottom by not curating a brand identity, and now like kids don't think it's as cool
It's like
anymore,
another
and they've had two
Minecraft
straight
with less
quarters
of an
decline.
identity. And so if that goes
Yeah,
away
yeah.
as a fad, well, people will just go back to playing Minecraft.
Exactly. Like Minecraft's like this huge merchandising operation, got a movie. Like, what would a Roblox movie even look like, you know?
It'd be like the
but
Ants movie
anyways,
after A Bug's Life. It's like we're the not A Bug's
Yeah.
Life.
Minecraft from Temu.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know. I can't even remember what the original question was now. But it does feel like there is this there has been this rush to chase a millennial spending kind of audience and neglect of those younger platforms. Like, I think Nintendo's stock's down massively over the last year. I think Nintendo's stock is incredibly undervalued because Nintendo has consistently curated that nostalgic adult audience, and their first party is just monstrously powerful on Switch, and they can build theme parks and stuff and make movies and do all this kind of stuff because they have stayed true to what their core vision is rather than race to the bottom, you know. And as much as I clown on Nintendo, because I was never a Nintendo kid, I almost like envy people who have that sort of nostalgia, because it's like I want to be part of that, but I can't because I never had Nintendo stuff as a kid. Really, I was a Sega kid, and my dream, and you all know what happened to Dreamcast, right? But
This
yeah,
is
I
rough from
definitely agree with the
Dreamcast to
take that,
Xbox. Sorry, I had to say it.
yeah, it's true. You know, I mean, I'm also like a big Blizzard guy, and you know, it seemed the way Warcraft's gone over the last few years not been particularly great either.
Well, at least that's an old franchise. You know, nothing is perfect forever. I'm a big Battlefield fan, and
yeah, for sure,
certainly had its ups and downs. Well, yeah, I think two things. There's both like the good and the bad, I could say, to what you're saying, which is the bad kind of thing that I think about when you say all of that is like PlayStation's, and this has been fascinating to watch, in my opinion, PlayStation's pivoting back to exclusives next year. And that's just like, wow, really? I mean, and then you look into it and it's like, oh yeah, like actually being multi-platform doesn't always make more money. Like we're learning this race to the bottom we saw where everything had to be on everything. Like we're even going to put, you know, this on a tablet for some reason. Like it actually doesn't make you more money every time. And I think that's a fascinating discovery here. It's like, okay, so you're going to rely on exclusives more next year. So do you understand that like half of your full price early sales are disc? Like, so your entire business model is going back to the PS3 model, and you're going to piss off the PS3 old school guys first? Like, it just seems so stupid to me. Again, for 5% more profit, what are you really gaining? But then there's the other part of me, which is separate, where I go, when it comes to like more IP, I give them a little grace. I go, Concord was a huge up. I mean, obviously plenty of Xbox games didn't work out, didn't make any money, whatever. But if we're being honest, it's been a really hard time for like a lot of companies and movies and like all like I don't think it's just gaming. I mean, the music industry has been flipped on its head by Spotify. I mean, there's all these things going on right now in media, and at least Sony's pivoting back to exclusives, and at least Xbox seems to like they want to as well. I don't know. And before you say there's no more new IP, what about, was it called Saros just came out on PlayStation? And I don't know, God of War is another God of War, but they're clearly trying to change it up at least. And Naughty Dog has a new IP. Actually, there's like several new IPs coming from PlayStation soon. And I have to imagine there will be from the amount of Xbox studios they have as well. So I continue to think like, and also like we keep acting like COVID did nothing, you know, and it's just like, COVID destroyed everyone's plans for everything. So let's see how the next few years look before we assume there won't be anything new, because I just think we have to admit that it was always going to be weird after COVID, you know.
Definitely.
Girthmaxer writes in again and says, also Sharma is just after doing mass layoffs across studios, including Bethesda and id Software, said that Xbox wants to churn out more AAA games like Halo, Elder Scrolls, and Fallout. Do you fear that Xbox's portfolio will be too focused on the expensive titles that need to be extremely successful every time, while smaller, more creative titles are missed entirely? How does Xbox navigate around this contradictory goal to make more games as well, while firing talent and knowledge to make those games?
It's a really difficult landscape right now for Xbox. I mean, and you touched on COVID, and it did feel like a bit during COVID, like everyone who was digital online saw a boom, right? Like, I pretty much made my career during COVID. Everyone was stuck online,
yeah.
So that had no choice but to watch podcasts and watch YouTube, and everyone was stuck at home. It was a great time to be digital space, and also for gaming as well. Everyone was playing gaming, and a lot of these companies went into massive hiring mode because they were like, this is all these new gamers are going to be here forever, And then we kind of got a 1-2 punch. Like all the people who came into gaming during COVID left because they were sort of fair weather gamers, or tourists, as the kids say, and then we went straight into this artificial intelligence boom. So all the venture capital that had flooded into gaming to take advantage of COVID, it wasn't even like a slow pivot. It was like an immediate pivot out of gaming, and all the investment went to servers and AI and all that bullshit. So it was sort of like it's been a very disruptive time for not just like gaming, but anything that's sort of adjacent in that universe. And also you got pressure from like addictive, infinite scrolling social media, which is not a trivial aspect of it as well. You've also got like Roblox are spending themselves out of business to compete for those users, and Sony and Microsoft and whoever else, they can't compete with Roblox on spending, who are pretty much running the entire company on debt, which is not sustainable. But at least in the short term, before Roblox maybe implodes, is at least another wrench in the gearbox, I suppose. Is that even a phrase? Did I just make that up? I don't know. But it's I think like there'll be a happy medium that eventually, I mean, I hope, God, it feels like since COVID, everything's just been nonstop chaotic, geopolitically, economically. Like we went to watch The Odyssey the other day, as you mentioned, and we had to buy diesel for the car, and it was like €2.50 a litre, and like last week it was like lower than €2. It's like the prices are fluctuating like crazy, like here and across the board. So, when it comes to maybe finding an equilibrium, I want to hope that things will eventually become boring again, hopefully. And you have to wonder, like, in that sort of era where things are maybe a little bit more stable, a little bit more boring, maybe that does give them more room to try more experiments, like things like Kinect, and not just on the IP side, but also like experimenting with business model peripherals.
Yeah, well, the PS6
Game Pass
handheld,
was supposed
right?
to
That's
be
cool.
a
They're going to
vehicle.
do a handheld again.
Yeah. Well, like I can give Sony credit. At least they tried VR, and I do think like they'll be like, when things are stable again and maybe the AI bubble bursts and just like a couple of key players emerge, they'll start innovating again and start trying to look for what the next big thing is. So whether that's like a small IP that grows into something bigger, like I interviewed Matt Booty at the start of the year, and I literally said to him, because like I was like, in this era, are these small games going to survive? I was literally thinking of Double Fine when I said this, because Double Fine had just shipped Keeper and Kiln, which were both very experimental games and clearly were never going to make a penny. And I'm sitting there thinking like, this Double Fine's going to get shut down. Thank God they didn't get shut down; they got spun off. But I was thinking like, and I said to him like, how do small games survive in this new, in this reset era that you're kind of building up? And he said, everything that's big starts as something small. And he said, Star Wars, Minecraft, like everything initially has like is a small innovation that grows, right? So I think when things are a bit more stable, we do see innovative IP, hopefully, because I don't. There can't just be Halo, Forza, Gears company forever. You can't just expect God of War and and the Naughty Dog game that comes out once a decade to do the heavy lifting either. You've got to try things like Saros. You've got to try things like, dare I say it, Redfall. You've got to experiment and see and try new things and see if something sticks, because who knows, the next big thing might just be around the corner. The next Minecraft might be around the corner.
Yeah, and I think, like you brought up Obsession earlier, I think this idea of let's make $101 million movies and see if one of them makes $500 million, then doing this, we can only profit if we make $1 trillion off this game model seems silly to me.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Actually, let me move on to this. One more thing to get to here. So Dashi PSN just writes in and says, how big will the actual generational leap for RDNA 5 be, especially in ray tracing, efficiency, and frame generation features? And how strongly will it shape the next-gen consoles? Well, so I'm just going to shamelessly say this. If you want to know how powerful the PS6 or the Helix is, go watch my videos that spent 20 minutes to an hour telling you what it was already a year ago. Please, I could use the clicks. But, I will say, I did just pull this up, so I'm not going to show it on screen because I don't think it would be safe to the source to do so. But I do have some documents from AMD where they're simulating different specs. Should we use this much cache, this much RAM, this fast RAM, this many compute units, and what's the difference? And I because I just read this question, I was genuinely just curious. I'm like, you know what? Can I tell you? And to put things in perspective, now this is, I think, a 2-year-old document simulating RDNA 5 performance for PlayStation 6. But I'm looking here, and there's one configuration that only has 25% more bandwidth and 33% more compute units. And it's over double the performance of the PS5. And so when you ask me how much better RDNA 5 is, to me, it looks like it is double the performance per compute unit, at least, or something around there. And this is, I believe, in raster in just one type of game. This isn't even ray tracing, where it's probably more. So when it comes to how much better is next gen going to be, and I think there's been a lot of doomer gooning, I would say, over this. It's going to be faster, guys. I can't promise you what the price will be. I can't promise you if you can buy it. I can't promise you if you will want to buy it to play discless games. But I can tell you is if they don't this up, AMD is giving them something that is going to, I think, be a pretty massive uplift. But I want to ask you this, Jez, how important do you think the performance is to next gen? How important do you think it is that it feels like a, 360 to Xbox to 360 sized uplift? How important do you think that is?
It's a really interesting question, because we are talking about this sprint to this sort of sense of authenticity, and people are willing to play games that don't look the most technically brilliant. They are willing to play games that are maybe look stylized and unique, and it's especially true of the Steam cohort, right? The most popular configurations on the Steam survey aren't necessarily the most powerful usually, but I do think it's really important psychologically for the industry, and not just consumers, but also developers, to be excited about the potential therein. So, and especially if it's if it's potential that can emerge without necessarily increasing how much work the developers have to do. So if it is in things like upscaling, if it is in things this is naturalistically, the lighting is going to be physics based and not necessarily manual, and you don't have to do weird tricks and stuff to make a mirror, and it just, the system handles it, right? Or the drivers handle it. So I mean, it goes two ways. I do think it's really important that they come with a demo that really shows the potential, because the coalition, whether or not you like Gears of War is a matter of taste, but you can't deny the coalition are wizards when it comes to Unreal Engine. I don't know if you played that Matrix demo there.
I did try that one.
Showcasing Unreal Engine. Yeah. I was like, this is just like, it didn't run that well on a Series X, but it was like, this is just like you can infer in your head what this would look like running on
like
a more
at
powerful
120
system.
or 60 frames in 4K without the weird glitches.
Yeah. Like the vehicle deformation. I remember like I had a Gatling gun and blasting bullets into a van, and like the vehicle deformation was so granular and so realistic and so immersive. It was like, yes, that is exactly the kind of technological leap that I suppose you want to see from these kind of systems. But I suppose yeah, I'll have to defer to your videos to see how it shows up, because I kind of look at it more from a consumer lens, and it's sort of like all this stuff sounds great on paper, but it's really on the developers to use it in the best way. Some developers, you know, are like, we'll cram the most visually stunning environments, and then people complain that it's 30 frames per second, right? Even if like they've created an environment that looks very realistic, but they still prefer it to be 60 frames, even if it costs them some fidelity. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what the first games look like, because I will say this. I remember when I was reviewing the Series S and X, and I was like, I think we had Watch Dogs as games we could test. We had Watch Dogs Legion and something else, I can't remember. And like Watch Dogs Legion, I don't think it even had the ray tracing stuff turned on yet. And I was just kind of like, I was very whelmed. You know, it was like, this is the next generation. Because I was also coming off the Xbox One X, which was pretty powerful in its own right. And it was just like, I just remember not being particularly impressed. The only thing I could really get a discernible improvement out of was like some games with an unlocked frame rate, like Monster Hunter World, for example. They ran demonstrably better on a Series X without an update. So it was like, okay, that's something I can point to. And I did like a frame rate comparison of the two games. But beyond that, there wasn't anything particularly special about it. So if RDNA 5 is like this big leap, like you and others suggesting, I hope there's something that showcases that out of the box, because it feels like a long time since we had that kind of wow kind of moment from a generational leap, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the number one thing they can do is like, you know, just, I don't know what would be the perfect game, but like show Alan Wake 2, which I don't, you know, I played it on PlayStation. I think it's on PlayStation Plus, so I got it for free, and or for free with the, you know, license or whatever, that with the yearly fee. And I don't know what the base res is, but they added PSSR 2 to it. I think it looks pretty good, but like, I think I still play it in non-ray tracing mode, because it's like they just crank it up way too high for a console. It's like, what are you doing? And if they could show that, you know, and like, ooh, on PS5 Pro or Series X, it runs it like whatever it is. Again, base PS5 runs at a crazy low resolution. You know, like it's like 900p, and then they show it on PS6, and they're like, all right, well, here it is at 4K 120 with ray tracing crank with path tracing mode on, and then like add some AI feature to it as well. Or, you know, I guess I don't know when this game will be ready, but or maybe they show Starfield on Xbox Helix, and they're like, it's getting an update where you can talk to the NPCs, and because it can do that with AI, you don't need to type anything or choose which option. You can just have an ally be in some dungeon like on a moon or at something you land on, and be like, watch my back, and they'll just go affirmative and just watch your back, and they know what that means. I think that sort of stuff will probably resonate substantially more than what we saw last time, because like, I don't know, fast load times or whatever were cool, but the problem is most games were still built for last gen anyway. So how much fat, you know, I don't think they ever really fully realized that. And I think, let's just be honest, being able to show ray tracing or talking to NPCs is easier to put in a trailer and a commercial than it is like, ooh, can you please squint? This isn't 1080p anymore. It's 1600p. You know, like this is going to be something that'll probably be easier to market to. All right. I guess my final question just is, Giadroni writes in and says, Tom and Jez, as I think we all know, cheaper console generally equals more units sold. Yeah, I guess. But he goes, Series S outsold Series X. Yeah, but they also made more Series S's during the pandemic. He says Switch 2 is the most valuable in today's economy, destroying PS and Xbox numbers. I know, but is that fair? It's a new console. But anyways, I'm going to cut to the chase. He asked, do you think Asha understands the hardware business and can make a $1,000 project succeed at that high price point? Or do you think they need a cheaper offering that's $400 to $600 as well? Because I fear that if someone sees a $600 PlayStation and $1,000 Xbox, they're just going to ignore the Xbox.
Well, I mean, I get this question a lot on my show too. And one of the things was kind of like, is this where the OEM play comes in? The OEMs, does Xbox make the premium Xbox, and then do they get Asus or whoever else to make a more affordable option potentially with the chip, but maybe I don't know, different materials, I don't know, and different components. But then it's kind of like one of the benefits of a console is that developers know exactly what the configuration is, and I suppose like there's not a lot of wiggle room for engineering on price there, unless like you're manufacturing it and selling it to avoid certain tariffs or whatever. I don't know, but I imagine there's probably not going to be a huge amount of wiggle room even if they did do that model. Like I was thinking about like all kinds of things. Could they do a model where it's like bring your own storage and it doesn't come with a drive and you put your own NVMe in it or something, and then it just sort of you link it to your Microsoft account and it images the console from the cloud. I don't know. I was thinking about all kinds of ways they could try and keep the cost down, but I do really question this idea of like a mass market $1,000 device. But Microsoft's mindset is probably like, we're just a PC OEM now. I mean, these consoles are like, they're using pretty much off the shelf parts now, and they are just another PC option in a sea of PCs. And maybe they're just like, we don't really see hardware as our core business anymore. It's sort of like almost like a vanity thing. But I'm also sitting there thinking like, Game Pass is your main driver of growth right now, and you kind of can't grow Game Pass without selling hardware, because people will just go to Steam on PC and Apple and Google will block it on their devices. So you kind of need to sell some hardware. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how they approach this, because right now it's just, I have no idea. It just both options seem bad. I don't know.
Yeah, I think whether it's PlayStation or Xbox, there's a lot of unknowns, and like I can tell you what, whether it ends up well or not, and I obviously hope they all do. I want everything to succeed. I am sure we will have a lot to say about it. Like, I've never been more sure there will be a lot to talk about next gen than this generation. Because the last one, it's like, it's better, it loads fast. This, I think there's going to be entirely shifting markets to discuss. So, but I think on that note, that's probably a good one to end it. You spent quite a lot of time with me today, Jez. I want to thank you for that. And I know it's late where you are in Germany, so I should probably let you get to bed soon. But please promote yourself and anything else, plug whatever you want.
No, thank you so much for having me. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, some people, like, they often I suppose try and console war sometimes, and they're like, oh, Moore's Law is dead, said this about Xbox, and try and get my take on it. And so I've been familiar with your work for a while, but I really appreciate the opportunity to actually speak to you properly and all that kind of stuff. So thank you very much for the invite, first and foremost, and thanks to your community for having me as well. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter mostly at Jez Corden, JZCorden. Also, Xbox2 Podcast, also known as XB2, on Patreon, and also on Spotify and wherever you get podcasts, and also windowscentral.com/gaming. Typically, if I post something on Windows Central, it's something I've confirmed with multiple sources. If I'm talking on a podcast, it's usually like rumors or speculation, and people often conflate speculation with reporting, as you know.
I don't remember what it was, but I think it was just in the past 6 months. Like, I said something about what I think. I don't know if it was AMD, PlayStation, Xbox would do. And all these articles were written, insider confirms this. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I said it would be cool if they did it. I have no clue.
Yeah. It's one of them, but it's the nature of the beast. And sometimes often, like, I see like people translating it wrong into their languages, and it's
maybe they used AI and didn't even actually watch AI it, and
gets translated back and forwards. But here's what it is. But yeah, I really appreciate hanging out with you, and thanks so much for having me, and to your community as well. I'm riding this wave as long as it lasts until AI gives me my layoff as well.
Oh, I don't think so. If you're authentic, I think that's something that people will actually be. Well, we were just talking about that people will be more desperate for. So, but again, that's me being the optimist. We'll see. Everything could be terrible. And yeah, thank you for coming on. I'm sure I'd love to have you on again, in fact, and more news comes out at some point. And
yeah, sure.
People will be able to find you below. We'll have a link to all of your stuff there as well. So anyways, though, thank you again for coming on. Thank you to everybody for watching and for listening, and have a good rest of your week, everybody. This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarked by me, the creator, Tom. However, Moore's Law is Dead is much more than just one man. It is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance also provided by Carbon Cry and Kerry No Sugata. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com. On the About Support page, in the event you want to hire me for consulting work, or hire Gerard for audio work, Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or interested in working with Carbon Cry or Kerry No Sugata as well, you can find all of our information there. You can also find our long-term sponsors there and show them some love for helping make this work possible. Additionally, if you are a fan and would like to mail Moore's Law is Dead some love in a letter or with hardware donations, please mail parcels to Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee 37206. And speaking of fans, patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content possible. Every month, and every day actually, depending on the person, me, Gerard, Dan, Jean-Philippe, and more are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of entertaining content and investigative journalism that aims to be as independent as possible from outside influence. Only direct funding from fans can make this possible in the modern era. And so if you have any extra money every month, even just $1 or $2, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. All members of the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon, even down to the $1.28 128-bit tier, get access to a catalog of dozens of essential Die Shrink episodes and the ability to ask guest questions ahead of Broken Silicon recordings. Additionally, higher tiers get access to the entire catalog of hundreds of episodes of Die Shrinks, and these include exclusive interviews with game devs and other guests, behind-the-scenes looks at Moore's Law is Dead leaks, and more niche coverage of subjects that really only the biggest gaming dorks like me and you would care about. They would not profit on YouTube, but they don't have to profit on Patreon. And so if you're interested in that, you can get access to all of that stuff and even more at higher tiers, like ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask free questions in Loose Ends live streams ahead of recordings, thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts, and access to the Discord with thousands of fans there who would love to discuss gaming hardware with you. I am one of them. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us, please just share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app. All of that stuff does help a ton as well. But as I said, this podcast would not be possible without its patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now is the time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 1024-bit HBM3 or higher supporter levels: Brad Medlin, Z Jits, Daniel D, Nicholas Buckner, Deke, Aaron Close, Jen Rauner, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GC Ziggy, Jerem Ferrer, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Sarcrastro, Chris Rich, Cal Buma, Evan Dingle, Shredbird, Sammy Malas, Chrysanthenos, Tommy, Matthew Cassels, Jonathan Winwang, Jake Dude 23, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Dan M 1988, Amiable Chief, Gamers Unite, Ian Clifford, I Should Meat and Pork, Travis Gooding, Zoot Taylor, Mads, Greg, Michael McGee, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Salty Internet Pirate, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Teak Autumn, Little Germany, Windstar, James I. Rader, The Forbidden Juice, Denny Nguyen, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, Mac Daffy, Justin Bussell, Brian Wright, Austin Haggerty, Jofit, John Swin, Brian Scanlon, Hardland, Slushbot, RB Racer, Bing Balling 3, Magnolis, Ragkusis, Solarized 80, Keekum, Sprutnik, Smash Axley, Cornster 671, Penta Winto, Huger, Ander Kiwi, Omega Doge, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, AI Soldier 789, Karim El Masri, Fred Burger, Rye Hilchi Bulls, Kevin Kuntz, Jonathan Harris, Kainush, Kagani, Johnny Trans, Hunter Temple, Zabir Ahmed, Arkeo, RK0, Henry Day, Dudester, John Tiberius, Mirica, OMG Clover, Serve, Chilled, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.